Well, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have on Army Ranger, combat veteran, award-winning filmmaker, accomplished combat journalist, New York Times bestselling author, and fellow Midwesterner. No? Okay.
Not a New York Times.
New York Times, okay.
Not a New York Times
Scratch
bestseller
that.
yet.
Not a New York Times bestseller, but a bestselling author though, right?
Yeah,
okay.
sold a lot of books.
Okay,
yeah.
sold a lot of books. Bestselling author and fellow Midwesterner, Marty Skovlund Jr.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, dude.
Dude, I'm so stoked. We're both chatty Cathy, so like we were talking for about 30 minutes. I was like, we got to start.
Yeah, we have to actually start recording some of the conversation.
Yeah. We'll just talk for 2 hours and then like miss the podcast. You got to get back
and
on your
before
flight.
we know it, it's going to be like, well, then we'll have to start the process of our Midwest goodbye, which also you have to allot about 2 to 3 hours.
Exactly.
For,
yeah. We'll do a late lunch and then it'll be a long.
yeah. Pull out the tater tot hot dish and,
Yeah, I know. Dude, this is awesome. I'm so glad you're on. I'm so happy you're on.
Anytime I can get back to the Midwest is great. I've been coming through the Minneapolis airport a lot lately. I had just recently got back from my 20-year high school reunion in South Dakota.
Oh, did you went?
So, yeah, I connected through Minneapolis, and that was just not too long ago. So I'm making a regular habit of coming back through. But it's good. I mean, I live out in New Hampshire now, and but I grew up in South Dakota. That's who I am. Mm-hmm. That's, I'm always going to be an import out there in New Hampshire. I'm not a native New Englander. So who I am, how I was raised, my values, all that is Midwest.
I feel the same way too, because even like Minnesota, and people have been like, oh, you're, I like, people are like, yeah, I just like moved to Texas and I'm just living there now. Or I moved to what? I'm like, I can't like fathom being outside of Minnesota. Like when I even the Marine Corps, I was stationed in Hawaii and I couldn't wait to get off that rock to come back to Minnesota. Yeah. Like, I don't know what it is. I'm just like, Midwest or that Minnesota. Like, I love Minnesota. Like I envisioned myself living and dying here. Ventures outside of it, do a bunch of stuff. Even like filmmaking wise, like I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be making movies, but I want to make movies. I'm never moving to Hollywood. Like I'm not going into that system, but I have these ambitions to go and do like film directing. So I have to figure out another way to do it because I have no desire to live in LA,
And there's a great creative community here, specifically in Minneapolis. Like there's a lot of creatives here, a lot of artists, a lot of people that have gone into some sort of creative career field.
Yeah, exactly.
And so is it Hollywood? No, not necessarily. But look at what those guys down in Texas are doing. Texas wasn't exactly Hollywood, so they just made it
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like they forced the function, and Minnesota's a great place.
Yeah. Well, it's also too, I think things are just different with technology and things. Like you can go and do a bunch of projects, make a really good living, and like none of my clients are now I'm full time at Vet TV, but none of my clients were in Minnesota, so I was making a good living without even touching a client in Minnesota. Everything was out of state. So you can go do those awesome projects without having to be like, I got to go move somewhere to go do that now. Yeah. It's, you don't have to do that anymore. But yeah, man. All right. We're going to start the origin story of Marty Skovlund Jr.
And who better, Ethan, than the guy who did my It's Who We Are when we were both at Black Rifle.
I know, right? Dude.
If only we would have hung that freaking flag up the right
way. Dude, I tried like doing the digital manipulation up and it was like breaking my computer and it was like, it was the way that...
have to go with a real close crop
dude,
on that
it was like a really good shot. And it was like, now we have to punch in on... It wasn't a shitty camera, but it wasn't meant to be punched in like that
the original shot was so beautiful. That barn that we shot in, the American flag, hanging back there, like it was just a shame that the original shot couldn't be used because it was so beautiful.
I know, but I think I even had the slider on that one too. Anyways, I was always fighting for the slider shot, but so where'd you originate? Where you come from?
Yeah, so like we were just talking about, I grew up in South Dakota, and for people familiar here on South Dakota, very proud South Dakotan. And, I grew up outdoors as much as I could, hunting as much as I could, fishing as much as I could, all that sort of stuff. Loved basketball too. You can't tell I'm sitting down right now for people watching this, but I'm a pretty tall dude.
Yes.
Most of my family had served in the military, so I'd always had that sort of influence on my life. So growing up, I kind of, my mom, God bless her, she always told me, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I wholeheartedly believe that, And so I had kind of two goals growing up. I was like, I either want to play for the Lakers or I want to be an Army Ranger, And, by the time I got into, high school, it was pretty clear I wasn't going to be drafted by the Lakers out of high school. So my sights really started to shift toward the military, and specifically, okay, Army Ranger, that's what I'm going to go do, and that was, I was in high school when 9/11 happened. I was already planning to join the Army before that, but maybe that solidified things for me, or at least clarified that, well, if I'm going to go be an Army Ranger, it's definitely not going to be in peacetime, most likely, and so that kind of clarified what the way ahead for me was going to look like. And then, as I made my way through high school, just, I ended up, quitting basketball and joining the cross country team, because every advice I'd heard was like, you got to be a really good endurance runner if you want to be a Ranger, which was not wrong.
Yeah.
I should have joined the swim team as well, honestly. But, just started preparing for that. And I graduated high school on a Sunday in 2005 and was down at Fort Benning by Tuesday.
Nice.
And kind of started my journey there. And so, typical for that time period, it looks a little bit different now. I know you had Mike Burke on recently. I'm sure he talked a little bit about how that selection process has changed.
Yeah.
But back when I went through, I went through Infantry O, sit there at Fort Benning, and then Airborne School, and then at the time it was called Ranger Indoctrination Program.
Yeah, RIP. Yeah.
Which is now the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. But it was, at the time, it had just been lengthened to 4 weeks. It's actually now an 8-week program. But at the time, it had just gone from 3 to 4 weeks. So I was one of the first guys to go through the 4-week program, which they added that 4th week on just to start to introduce a little bit of demo, a little bit of shooting, a little bit of just give you a little bit more than just like the gut check that was the first 3 weeks, to make sure you weren't like a quitter or something like that, and send you off to battalion to learn everything there. Now they're like, okay, guys are deploying as soon as they graduate RIP, we got to at least make sure they know how to shoot, move, and communicate.
Yeah.
At least the basics, so that their new team leader has something to work with in the finite amount of time that they have. And I really was sort of a good example of that, because I graduated RIP, got my tan beret, assigned to 1st Ranger Battalion, and it was like 6 weeks later I was in Iraq.
No shit. So you were that fast of a turnaround then?
Yeah.
I didn't know you were that fast.
Yeah, it was super quick turnaround. And so off to my first deployment. And again, I didn't know anything, so we kind of had to figure things out a little bit on the way. Made plenty of mistakes and all of that. But made it through that. And so I spent just shy of 5 years, like 4.5 years at that first part of my career there. Did 3 deployments to Iraq, 2 to Afghanistan, and
What years were those?
This would have been in the time frame between 2006 to 2010, basically. And so good years to be a Ranger.
Yeah.
In retrospect, really good years to Ranger in the War on Terror. I definitely was not like the cream of the crop down there. This goofy tall kid from South Dakota who overthought everything.
Yeah. So what was your your best memorable experience, if you could, or your funniest fuck up?
Well, do you want like that? Well, I was gonna say, I just kind of gave you the wave tops there of my first
let's
year
deep
in the
dive.
Army.
I want to deep dive.
Okay,
how did you feel?
How did it really go?
Yeah.
I got shot in basic training. I got food poisoning in airborne school. I fell off the fast rope tower in RIP. So each of those were delays in their own. So when I got shot in basic training, it was during BR, basic rifle marksmanship.
Yeah.
And I was on the 200-meter line at the known distance range on main post Fort Benning there.
Yeah. And
caught one in my shoulder. The scar's still there to this day.
Yeah.
And basically I had to, I was in like week 5 or 6 at that point. But, when you're qualifying in basic, and I'm sure this is the same way in any of the services, it's kind of a big gate that you have to pass.
Yeah.
And so when I got shot, they're like, you're going to need to go home, because I couldn't like do a push-up or anything like that. They're like, we're going to send you home on 30 days of convalescent leave to heal up, and then have you come back. They're like, if you qualify before you leave on your rifle, then you can be reinserted at week 6 when you come back with a different company. That's at week 6. If you don't qualify, then you're at day 1. You go back to, you didn't reach the first save point, right? And so you're back to day 1. And I was like, well, that, anybody that's ever gone through any basic training ever is like, I don't want to do this shit any longer than I have to.
Yeah.
So it was like, let me go qualify. So I had to go out there, big old bandage on my arm, and admit it. Some people take multiple attempts to qualify healthy. My excuse is that I was literally having to shoot with my left eye and left eye. Like it was not a comfortable situation. I was shooting all fucked up. And, so it took me a couple of rounds up there, but I finally qualified, and that was like, okay, yep, you're good to go. And I didn't even qualify at like the lowest level. It was at like the middle marksman or no. Yeah. Whatever the middle level is, not expert, but the one in between.
Sharpshooter?
Yeah, sharpshooter.
Yeah.
So after multiple times, which I feel like if you take more than one time to qualify, you should immediately be, like the best you can do is the lowest level if you took multiple tries. You shouldn't be able to qualify as like a sharpshooter and expert if you took multiple tries.
Were you doing, was that like the 30, the drop down? Or like Army does the whole like...
Yep. It was those. System. It was the pop-up targets, iron sights, all of that. No. Correction, it was not iron sights. They just started us on those M68 comp M's, I think.
Oh yeah, the aim points or whatever. Or the red dots.
No, that was RIP. No, so it was iron sights in basics. It's been a couple years.
Yeah.
It was iron sights in basic, and then when I went to RIP, it was they had us on the comp M's. So iron sights, the regular rifles, nothing Gucci on them or anything like that. They're basic training rifles, so they've been ran through like crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, qualify. And so then I got sent back home on 30 days of con leave, came back, which was actually kind of cool because, everybody looks forward to their summer after their senior year before everybody goes to college and stuff. And I was going to be missing out on that. And I actually got a little bit of it and kind of came back as, everybody back, small town, everybody heard that I got shot. And
they think it was in combat, like right away. They're like, "You went to war already." And got shot.
There may have been like one or two people, but usually there was like, "Wait a second, you haven't even graduated basic." It was more of a like, "There's no way you got shot in combat." You know? It was like, nope, it happened in basic training. I actually had one specific friend. His name's Brent. He may listen to this. He, all through our senior year of high school, when he found out I was joining the Army, he's like, "You're going to get shot. You're going to get shot in like basic training." And I was like, Brent, that doesn't happen. Like that's not a thing that happens to people. I might get shot in Iraq or something. I'm not going to get shot in basic training. And then when I came back, he like, according to him, I think he went and bought a bunch of lottery tickets when he found out because it was like winning the lottery to him. He's like, "Man, I need to ride this luck." If Marty got shot in and he to this day is like so proud that he called it.
So how did you get shot? Like, I mean, like, did somebody, obviously they called like,
so it was, how range complexes are set up on bases. They're kind of all right next to each other.
Yeah.
And typically you will have a berm with trees on it separating them. This was the known distance range on Fort Benning at the time. They did not have a berm like they did out at the Sand Hill complex. They had just a tree strip. And so not the same level of protection between. So we were on the known distance range. Like I said, I was on the 200 meter line, and it was those ones where half the company goes down to sit with the targets and they'll like mark them and then wheel them up. They're like behind a berm back there.
Yeah.
And then the other half is shooting.
Yeah.
Well, the range next door to us was, again, a bunch of basic trainees, but they were doing a live fire 3 to 5 second rushes. And so they're learning how to move and shoot at the same time, basically.
And there's no berm between you.
And no berm in between. And, I think before me, it had never been an issue.
Yeah.
A 3 to 5 second rush, typically you will run 3 to 5 seconds forward at the low ready, and then you will come to a stop in an aggressive position, raise your rifle, and then you will move it to fire and squeeze off your rounds, and then, a controlled pair, I think it is, and then put your rifle before lowering it back on safe, and then lower it back to the low ready, and then move your next 3 to 5 seconds forward. That's how it's supposed to work. Apparently, and I never met the person that shot me or anything like that, but apparently what I was told is that this person did their 3 to 5 seconds forward, this high-speed individual did their 3 to 5 seconds forward, brought up to shoot, moved it, instead of to regular fire, they flipped it to 3-round burst, and, no, I'm getting this wrong. They moved it to fire, and then, because you go from safe to fire to 3-round burst, so they moved it to fire, shot off their controlled pair, but then instead of going back down to the low ready, they kind of daddy shotgunned it, never took their finger out of the trigger well, so the finger was still on the trigger, and they flipped the selector switch to the wrong way over to 3-round burst. and then took off tucking down the range, tripped on a root or their feet or what, tripped on something, you know, and in the process of falling, squeezed off a 3-round burst, you know, off to their left. And one of those rounds caught my shoulder.
Dude, that's wild. Yeah. I mean, that's like, joke about it now, but that could have took your head off. You know,
could have. Like, you know, everything in basic is you're like in a buddy system.
Yeah.
My buddy that was standing right there, that had he been the one the other way around, he was a short little Asian kid.
Yeah.
Like literally, if we were just standing there, my shoulder was his head. Like literally, if that had happened 2 minutes prior, he would have caught one in the dome.
Yeah.
Like, you know, or it would have been a very near, you know, Trump level. Like,
Like,
you know,
oh
Matrix. You know, like one of those things. But like, it was like, it could have been bad. So lucky that he wasn't standing there because he's significantly shorter than me and all that. And then also, as far as getting shot goes, pretty lucky because it entered right here, like right behind the armpit.
Yeah.
So when they look at, and because it was coming off to my right, it wasn't like a straight on, it was a lateral entry. So it didn't go through, it traveled toward my spine, but stopped just shy of the spine. So it stayed within that muscle, that back muscle. And where it entered, it had missed my brachiocephalic artery by like a millimeter. Yeah. Which if it had even nicked that, dude, you got like 30 seconds. Yeah. You know, like that's a tough one. That's like a lot of people know the femoral artery because of Black Hawk Down. It's the femoral artery of your armpit, like your brachiocephalic artery. You do not want to cut that thing. No. And so I was in an unlucky situation, fairly lucky in that it stopped short of my spinal column and it just missed my brachiocephalic artery. So again, sucks. It delayed my journey through the initial
could have been way worse in so many ways.
Exactly. So you just got to kind of say like, hey man, that sucked. And I think that there's like probably a life lesson of that. When things are bad, they could always be worse. Exactly. Right? Yeah. And that was kind of one of my first real examples of that.
I was curious about that because like the Marine Corps, we like move up. Or we move back. So you go 100 and then we move back.
That's what we were doing.
Yeah. And so and now I see Army now it's like pop-ups. So I was like, oh, you get shot.
Well, this was the known distance range. The pop-up range is a separate range.
Separate. Okay, got it.
And this wasn't me qualifying. This was during basic rifle marksmanship, just one of the ranges that you do.
It's just wild they didn't have a berm between you guys. Like,
and again, on our Sand Hill complex, where all of the basic training ranges, they do have that. The known distance range on main post is you only go there because I think I don't know what the deal is. I think it might be the only known distance range on the post, or maybe it was then. I don't know. Something was going on. But you typically don't go all the way to main post to shoot. Yeah. You typically stay out there at those Sand Hill complexes. Oh, okay. So, and it was those ranges on main post, they're older. They go back to like World War II. Yeah. You know?
It was because I have a same kind of story there. It wasn't so like Marine Corps boot camp, sometimes if you don't want to be there, people try to find a way to get out. And so I was in infantry school. And when I was in boot camp at Edson Range, it's a big deal. It's like 2 weeks, you know, where you're going back and forth shooting all the time. And you see an ambulance go up and this kid had shot himself and all this stuff. We're like, oh, okay, well, what happened? Whatever. But, you know, the word had gotten around, you know, they told us like, don't do stupid shit. Don't shoot yourself, whatever. And then I get to infantry school and you realize that like a lot of those guys with you at infantry school were with you in boot camp. They were in another company or they were waiting to pick up or whatever. So we all kind of converge in infantry school. And he was like, the one guy, he was like, yeah, I was right next to him. I was like, oh, what happened? He goes, the guy didn't want to be there anymore. So he took the M16, shot his leg, hit his artery. And like, so the very little teachable C they gave us in boot camp, like the most minimal, which was like tourniquet, whatever. Yeah. He like ran over and tourniqueted the kid, but the kid ended up losing his leg.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And like, it was crazy because the kid, we weren't even in combat, and he's like, yeah, I think I got some PTSD from that. Because as he was like, he looked over at the kid, he shot himself, and it was like hit the artery, so it's like blood's going everywhere, and he like ran over and helped him. He's like, yeah, man, it kind of shook me up a little bit, and I'm like, bro, we're not even in combat yet, and you've already like got shaken up.
That's why I've heard people say before, like, oh, that dude was never in combat, so he's never seen anything. Like, man, there's some like messed up stuff that happens in the military, even outside of combat. Yeah. Not as common for sure.
No.
Like, there's like some things that you see that like are, you know, especially if you're in the medical field or something like that, like it's not just combat that like messed up situations happen. You know?
Well, like NTC and then 29 Palms, that's the big nefarious ones that no one talks about, but people die there every year. They just the word never really gets out. I don't know if, what it is.
Well, you just think
like,
about every time you hear about a jumper at like Fort Bragg or something that has a bad shoot deployment and they die on fire or something like that. Think about the paratroopers around him that just saw their buddy fucking lawn dart into the ground, like, and potentially try to perform life-saving, dude, that might mess a guy up a little bit.
Yeah, I had a buddy I was working with when I was working contracting overseas. It wasn't his squad, but it was another squad, and they thought they had all the head counts right, and they were like, it was a kind of like a big range. We call it range 400, but they were doing some. I think it was with like strikers or whatever. Well, they started lighting up the range, and they found out that when they moved off the range, they didn't get the proper head count. Because this boot or whatever had left, or new guy left some piece of equipment, and they never accounted for him coming back because they thought he was back in the rear. He ended up getting lit up by, getting killed by like whatever, the 30 millimeter chain gun or something, like whatever it was. And they thought, I've heard, and this is what he was like, yeah, man, we heard like, because they had silhouettes going, and they think they might have thought he was like a silhouette trying to get out or something. They were lighting him up. Anyways, they found his body and all that stuff, and that was mid GWAT. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. And you're like, oh man, like that's really shitty.
Yeah.
And we had guys in 2-3 that were relieving us at CAX, and the Mark 19 blue bodies. Mark 19 blue bodies will still like kill you. Even if they hit like your body, it'll mess you up like really bad. And so the Mark 19, they didn't, you're supposed to put your point down range and unarm it or whatever, unload it. And he didn't. He had the barrel still facing forward toward the gunner in front of him. And Mark 19s, you rack them back, and then you hit the trigger and it goes forward and it loads it. Anyways, he was trying to do something and he let go of it, and it's a open bolt weapon. So it took the blue body round, or the orange body or whatever, the Cheeto round, shot it right into the back of the head of a Marine, right in the turret, right in front of him, killed him. Yeah, and he's like, and that was it. Yeah, and we were waiting for them to relieve us, so we were hearing everything that was happening. We're like, horrible. It was like, oh man, I don't know how well they're gonna do, when they rotate us out, So
that's horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I mean, that's the way my track record was going in the military. I figured I was like, I'm not going to die in combat. It'll be some stupid thing like that. The way my military career started.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to airborne school after that. Finally graduated, and then the very first week of airborne school, just during PT, I ended up getting food sickness from the airborne DFAC, and I don't know, probably third or fourth day of that first week, you run down to this P-rock or sawdust or something like that type pit to do PT, and I just started throwing up everywhere. Just it hit me, and just throwing up everywhere in that, where people were doing PT everywhere. And they pulled me out. And then I was, it was 24 hours and it was out of my system. But in airborne school, if you miss a day of training, you automatically recycle to the next class. Good thing about airborne school is they run a new class every single week, or at least they were at that point. I don't know how it is now, but so I had to drop out of that class for that day because I missed a day of training with food sickness. Yeah, and just roll back to the next one. Yeah,
how long is airborne? Or sorry, how long?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
And so I just had to roll back with the next company that was starting the following Monday. So not a huge thing, but again, just God, another hiccup, And
that mentality too. You just want to get to the unit.
Exactly.
I remember being in boot camp, and our boot camp's 12 weeks long, and it's legit. Everyone's like, we need to survive to get to graduation, because you don't want to. Last place you want to be for 6 months is Marine Corps boot camp. Or we had guys break their legs and had gotten re-rolled and came into our class, and they broke their other leg, or it didn't heal properly, and they were just trying to become Marines.
Yep.
And the drill instructors were actually pretty nice. They're like, hey, look, we'll try our best to get you but you might have to re-roll.
Yeah.
And I knew this one kid, and you could just tell he was just broke, because he was just I want to just graduate boot camp, and he can't do it. And
it's frustrating because you're just trying to get past that first step.
Exactly.
It's the first step. And a lot of guys on Fort Benning, especially if you're on that infantry track, especially if you're also got a Ranger contract, it's dude, you're at Fort Benning for a long time, and you just want to see literally any other part of the Army besides Fort Benning as an initial entry soldier. And so it can be pretty frustrating. But Airborne school took me up through, we graduated airborne school like a day before Thanksgiving. And because they weren't going to pick up their classes were full in between, they put our entire group that was supposed to go class up. No, this is beforehand. This is before I went to airborne school. They put us on like 40 days of leave they put us on leave from Thanksgiving break until after Christmas block leave.
Because there was too many people?
Yeah, they didn't have, they couldn't get us in our OSIT class when we graduated. They couldn't get us into the next airborne school. They were all full. So they're like, the next class you guys can get into is like, picks up January 3rd. The Army doesn't like to keep a bunch of dudes with nothing to do just sitting around.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Idle hands are the devil's playground.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are all going on leave. Like, even if it puts you in the hole for leave, you're all going on leave.
Yep.
Be back here, January 2nd or whatever, whenever block leave gets done. So we all got to go home for 4 days. Like, dude, think about it. I'm in my first 6 months of the Army. I was already sent home for 30 days for convalescent leave. Now I'm going home for another 40 days. At that point, I'm like, dude, I'm active duty. I think I'm putting in like National Guard hours at this point,
Yep.
Like,
I was the same way too, because granted, I graduated everything, but I kept coming home, and people were like, "You're home for the third time within like 6 months." I was like, "Now I'm going to war." It was like a weird like boot camp leave, and I got Christmas leave, and then it was like, and then I came home again, and they're like, "You were just home," and I was like, "Well, now I'm going to war."
And the military giveth and it taketh away.
Exactly,
like you can have these periods where you're home a lot, and then you're not home for a long time. But yeah, after that block leave, I went and did airborne school, got food poisoning, got rolled back. And then, got my wings, graduated airborne school, and then got picked up they run you over to the Ranger compound. They're also on main posts there. And that's where they ran selection out of. That's where 3rd Ranger Battalion is. That's where regimental headquarters is. It's all right there. And that's where like you kind of felt like, oh, shit's getting real. When you get picked up for that, because everywhere else, it kind of feels like you're getting treated like a kid through basic training. You kind of get treated like a kid. In airborne school, it's like, I've heard the saying before. I didn't come up with this, but I've heard the saying. It's a 1 week course jam packed into a 3 week calendar. It's just, you kind of feel like it's like kid stuff a little bit. I mean, jumping out of an airplane is very serious, but the program, it just when those guys with tan berets show up and are like, okay, everybody with an option 40 contract, and those guys, guess what? Those Rangers, they look a lot different than those NCOs that you had as cadre at airborne or at basic training. Not that those guys were fat or anything like that, but like Rangers look different. It's like they look like D1 athletes that also have the 1,000-yard stare and dude, like bad dudes.
You were coming in at like a crucial to like 06.
Yeah, and that was the other thing is you were aware of like, okay, a bunch of the other NCOs, a lot of them had been to Iraq for OIF 1 or 2 or something like that, and they'd probably seen contact, combat and that sort of thing. But it's like you saw these Rangers with their CIBs and their all that stuff, and you're like, dude, I think the kind of combat they did was a little bit different. Like your imagination as a young private kind of goes wild, and so there's just that instant like we're not in Kansas anymore. Like this is different, and they run you down there, and it's a dead sprint down there. You show up, and they just immediately start fucking you up.
That's what Mike was saying.
Yeah, just immediately start fucking you up. They get a couple people to drop right there. You're not even in RIP yet. Like you haven't even been processed into holdover yet. Guys are like, yep. So
you got some of those, like, do you remember some of the specifics of that, guys? Just be like,
no, because I didn't really know anybody. Because remember, I got rolled back to a different airborne. So all those guys I went through, a lot of guys, if they just go straight through things, you're with the guys that you were with in basic are the guys you're with in airborne, RIP. So you'll stay with the same group. I kind of had to make friends along the way. So I didn't know a lot of the guys that I was running down with. I ended up becoming close friends with them. But most of them, because I'd been rolled back to that next class, I didn't, the guys that I'd made friends with and hold and all that stuff, they didn't, they were already, in the process of going to RIP and all of that. So no, I didn't know who these dudes were. But you get put into hold until you class up for an actual RIP class. And hold is just, it's they'll PT you. From what I understand, it's a much more structured thing now. They call it pre-RAS. Before it was just RIP hold, and you do PT in the morning. You do occasionally get smoked, but largely you get put on a lot of details and things like that. Like I remember I got put on one detail when I was in RIP hold, and it was to go clean the headquarters room for our RRC, the Ranger Reconnaissance, like, and it was just like all the dudes in there had like beards and stuff like that. I was like, oh shit, this is like the coolest place. And all the pictures on the wall were like, from not just Iraq and Afghanistan and all this other stuff. And you're just like, this is so fucking cool.
Because RRC, that's legit from what I heard.
Super.
Like super legit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, you get put on details like that, clean stuff, things like that while you're waiting. You'll do a PT test and things like that to make sure that you are good to go class up and everything. But another hiccup that I had, a very unfortunate one, while I was in Rep Hold, my cousin, Taylor, 16 years old, like a sister to me, she lived with, her dad was an active duty Air Force guy who deployed a lot. And so they would a lot of times come stay with us or like literally like a sister. She tragically up in North Dakota hit black ice, got thrown from the vehicle and tragically died at the age of 16. And I found that out. And so had to go and ask, have a Red Cross message come in and go home to go to the funeral. And so that I ended up missing that very next RIP class that was about to class up. And there, the cadre was super understanding. Like, yeah, man, go take care of family. That was like the first kind of like human side that you saw from regiment was when something bad happened to family. They were like, yeah, man, go do what you got to do. We'll see you back here. You'll go into the next class. That's whenever you get back. And so went to the funeral, all that sort of stuff, and then came back and then got into that next RIP class. And then that went through that. Everything was going great until the very last week. One of the last things that you have to do before you graduate, get your tan beret and go off to your unit is you have to do 5 ropes from the fast rope tower. And on like it was the 4th one. It was the first one where you're all going, because they do, crawl, walk, run, right? So like the first one is like individual, nothing, no equipment on you or anything like that. And then the last one is like a real one where you've got a ruck and all this stuff on you and everybody's going out one right after another, like full speed. So it's like the 4th one where you had your this is LCE time, so you had the canteen on either side and all that, but we didn't have a ruck on yet. But it was at like one right after another. And so we go up and we were on, most fast rope towers, they'll have a 60 side, a Black Hawk side, and then a Chinook side. On the Chinook, for anybody that's ever roped out of a Chinook before, the nice thing about a 60, that rope, when you get into the door, that rope is like right there between your legs. So you can just grab onto that rope, rotate out, and you're good. On a 47, you walk down to the edge, and then you have to kind of like reach out for the rope and then kind of, take the wheel Jesus out there, get on, and then slide down. So it's a little bit more nerve-wracking. Well, the towers are set up that way to where the rope is a little bit further out. You got to reach out for it and swing out. Well, what they teach you is when one goes up, you don't mount the rope until you see the helmet of the guy in front of you go below the platform. That's when you know there's enough distance. And so, get up there and, see the helmet go below. I reach out, go get one hand on, get to go. It's kind of a fluid motion of rotating and second hand all at the same time. Well, right as I'm rotating out, you need to get your feet on the rope. You don't just rope with your hands. Well, all of a sudden the rope disappears and I'm starting to fall. It's like starting to go and like I'm like clacking my boots together trying to I can't find the rope. It's in my hands, but I can't find the rope with my feet. And then it all happens so fast. Obviously, your hands start to burn. They instinctively kind of let go a little bit there. It sucked, but I fell about 35 feet, bounced off the P rock, and I was holy shit, and it sucked. I think I cracked a rib in here, and then had a spiral fracture on my tibia and stuff, and it was another one of those kind of situations, like in base training with getting shot, and except this time I had one rope left. The NCO that was out there, I'll leave his name out of it. He's notorious though. He was real cool, and he was like, "Hey man, that was your 4th rope. Totally understand if you can't, but like, there's no checkpoint here. Like, if you don't do that 5th rope, I can't graduate you in 2 days, and you're gonna have to do rep all over again." Now, I want to be super clear. I was not exactly the dude that was up for honor grad. I was I felt middle of the pack guy, but from my perspective, I felt like I was lucky to even make it to this point. So I wanted to be a ranger so bad, like more than anything. And in my mind, it was like, dude, I'm kind of rolling the dice if I say I'm going to take 2 months to go heal up from these things and then go do RIP again. Think about that, 2 months of healing from those things. That means you're not doing a lot of PT. You'd be showing up a little bit out of shape. Like that seemed like a huge thing. And I went, and they were cool. They were like, you don't have to wear a ruck, just do a 5th rope. That's it. If you can muster it, dude, I went and fucking hobbled my ass up the stairs there, up 40 feet up or whatever it is, and got my 5th rope in. And that is actually also why I ended up going to 1st Ranger Battalion, because of the 3 battalions, 1st Ranger Battalion typically is seen as the most desirable. You're on the beach. It's a cool college town. It's not a big military base.
Savannah, Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Or like, or so
Savannah's
this
awesome.
closer. Yeah.
No, it's right in Savannah. Like you're not even at Fort Stewart. You're in Savannah. It's awesome, and so everybody wants to go there. And so the next day when we were getting our assignments for it and stuff, and for 11 Bravos, there's a lot of them, so they can kind of go anywhere. If you're a soft skill or something like that, they might be like, hey, we need a 25 Charlie at this battalion. You don't really have a choice matter. 11 Bravos, you can kind of go anywhere because all the battalions have lots of 11 Bravo slots. And everybody wants to go to 175, and so they'd call out like, okay, who wants to go to this one? And people would just like jump over the desks in the classroom that you had in. It was like a fight, and intentionally so, to who wants it, and get up there, and then the way they would do it too is the cadre from each of those battalions would pick who they wanted to go to the battalion they came from, So the guy for 1st Ranger Battalion was also the guy that was out there at the rope tower with me and saw all that stuff. Again, he was kind of a notorious guy. And so they jump all that and all that stuff, and we get up there, and obviously I wasn't exactly the first one because I was fucking hurt. And so I was kind of in the back of the group there, and I really wanted to go to 175. I was like, I do not want to be stuck here at Fort Benning at 375. 275 was like kind of my second choice, but I really wanted to go to 1st Bat. And we get up there, and there's like, I don't know, 6 slots or something like that for 175. And so he's counting them off, and he gets to like the last one, and he looks at me, he's like, you know what? We need dudes that'll fucking pick themselves up after getting hurt. Like, you're going to 175. I was like, fuck yeah. Like, because I thought for sure I wasn't going to go. So that's how I got to 1st Ranger Battalion. Not only did I go to 1st Ranger Battalion, I went to the company, platoon, and the specific squad that instructor had just come from. So pretty wild how that all worked out.
But that's got to show him, though, like, look, you just fucked up pretty bad, and like he's gonna go back up the tower and graduate.
So I didn't fuck that up.
I mean, what happened?
So the guy that went down in front of me, I left this part out. The reason my feet couldn't find the rope, the guy that went down in front of me, remember I told you we were wearing the old LCs with the canteens on each side? Well, when you get down to the bottom rope, you immediately need to get out of the way. They tell you, go pull security, but you immediately take off so you don't have the next guy land on you. Well, the guy in front of me, no fault of his own really, like, he gets to the bottom and takes off running. Well, the rope got caught between his canteen and his body right there. He didn't realize he's just running as fast as he can. So he's taking the rope with him while I'm up there like, fuck, I'm holding onto the rope. But, the rope was at like a,
angle.
Damn near 45-degree angle, and that's why. So it was nobody's fault, really. It was just an unfortunate accident.
Well, I'm sure the cadre probably saw that too. Like, oh man,
100%. Yeah, nobody thought like, oh, Skovlund fucked that up. Like, to my knowledge, like that was not the vibe that was there.
But even fucking yourself up though, and like and then like getting back up and
but it was that little bit of grit of like getting up there, walking back up the tower, going back down again when you got things up, and that's kind of how I got there. And then what sucks though, and I didn't consider this when I was doing this. Well, as hard as it would have been, redoing RIP again and all that sort of stuff. Well, guess what? It's not exactly great showing up to a Ranger Battalion as a new guy on profile. Because they don't have any context for why you're hurt or anything like that. Like, it's just like, you might as well be just some broke dick that's like, so that kind of sucked. And then, like I said, we deployed to Iraq like 6 weeks later. I was just basically taken off profile like right before we went to Iraq. So I really had, outside of just like basic walkthrough stuff and things like that, I really didn't have full reps or anything like that. So
How did that go?
I mean, it was fine. I mean, I distinctly remember my very first mission. One of the things I had to do is we had these signs. This lasted for, I don't know, not even the whole deployment, but for a while there, leadership had put out that you had to put out these signs whenever we would go and raid a house that said, like, do not cross this line, otherwise you will be shot or something like that. But you had to go literally put that sign out there in the middle of the road. Well, we only went out at night, really. And so you're not even supposed to be out at that time of night because there was a curfew in Iraq at that time. So the streets were pretty empty and everything. But like, it was kind of a new guy duty to like carry the sign in and, you know, this big awkward sign on the bird, and you just look silly.
Please do not cross this line, or we are conducting a raid. Please stay back.
And so I was supposed to like run it out, and apparently I like put it in the wrong place of the road or something. My team was like, you know, they're not, you can't yell, but he's like, move the fucking sign, you know? And I'm like, what? Huh? Like, you can just imagine you're a new guy and you're just infuriating your team leader.
Just some tall, bumbly kid from the Midwest.
Yeah, and, dude, the way it's tall, skinny, and gangly, and I'm just like, under nods. You can just imagine what I look like under nods. You know, running around.
I'm a ranger,
just lost in the sauce. Somebody that deployment said something to me that has stuck with me since. They're like, Skovlund, you were the reason that Rangers are tier 2.
That's all. I love
the
that.
criticism in regiment is very, they don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you know, and gosh, you know, that first year or so ish in the military was just nothing but a calamity of errors and all that. But, you know, you do, if anything though, you do learn how to like just fucking keep going, you know, which is an important thing to learn, you know. But yeah, I ended up, you know, going through there and had my ups and downs at regiment as well. I ended up, my last 2 deployments, I ended up augmenting the technical surveillance element and just helping out those guys and kind of learning that world, which is kind of a fusion of intel and special operations, and kind of got exposed to that side of the world and really felt like that was my niche. I was never going to be the dude that was like going to go to some tier 1 unit or something like that as a shooter or anything like that. But I was like pretty good at that stuff. It was a little bit more thinking involved. Like I said, I'm a chronic overthinker, so like there was a little bit more thinking involved in that, and I really liked it. It was a little bit different. I still got to be out on target doing cool stuff and things like that, and it was like I really felt my thing. And so I wanted to go to a specialized, you know, special operations unit that did a lot of intel gathering for the special operations community. And that I'd learned about that unit via doing some of this work, because one of the section leaders went to that unit. And I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. But my wife was graduating college at the time. Wanted to go back up to Boston, and she'd been with me through 4 out of my 5 deployments. And she wanted to take a break. I was like, well, I don't want to get out of the Army. I don't want to, like, I want to go do this next thing. And I ended up, fortunately, getting connected to a guy that was a squadron commander up there, and he told me, he's like, yeah, man, you know, we get a lot of Rangers that come up and stuff, and the direct action experience is definitely wanted, but if you really want to set yourself apart, one thing that you could do is like go do a recruiting tour, because that's nobody that comes to us has any experience just being by themselves in the military, you know, and that's a big part of like what these guys do is small teams or by yourself. And I was like, oh, I've done sales before. I could do that. And recruiting is the one thing I'd heard that if you volunteer for it, you can pick where you want to go in the country. I was like, oh, I could let Lauren go get her design career started up in Boston, because she went to, that's how I met her. She was going to art school in Savannah to be an interior designer. And I was like, you know, I'll go be a recruiter up there. And of course, it didn't work out exactly like that. They didn't put me in Boston. They put me in central New York. It was like 5 hours away. Right part of the country, might as well have been in California.
The fact they even gave you an option is like,
but that was supposed to be the thing, though, is because Rangers aren't subject to branch details like recruiter or drill sergeant or anything. You're what you're called, you're fenced in. So the only way I would have even been able to do that is if I volunteered to do it. And you can volunteer. Well, the thing was, is I volunteered for the brigade and you can request a battalion, but they don't have to give you the battalion. They put me in the right brigade, the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic Brigade or whatever. They just didn't put me in the New England Battalion. So that was like a thing. But yeah, I volunteered to go do that with the intention of, at the end of this recruiting tour, I'll have that Ranger direct action experience, 5 deployments, all this other stuff, and plus this recruiting experience, which I'm sure I would crush it. And I did. I was a good recruiter. And I was probably a better recruiter than I was a Ranger, honestly. Or I hope I was, because I was not that good of a Ranger. So I hope I was a better recruiter. But yeah, I went and, did that for 3 years. And I went and taken the D-Lab, the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, which was one of the requirements to go switch over and do that. So I was getting all ready for that. And at the same time, I wrote something because I was feeling nostalgic and kind of put it on the internet and kind of took off. And before I knew it, I had a little side hustle. And then before I knew it, that side hustle was like a real business bringing in real money. And that kind of was like, man, I'm a recruiter. I know how to get back in if I want to come back in. Maybe I should get out and pursue this. It felt like a real opportunity. And kind of the rest was history. I got out, started a business off that thing that I wrote, started a blog that became the Havoc Journal, and, founded that. And, after, wrote the book Violence of Action, as well as compiled a bunch of like personal essays from Rangers that helped really fill out the meat of that book. Put that out, and that was kind of the first real telling a regiment's story. And then from there, kind of worked my way into conflict journalism. After I, left that company that I started, we kind of broke it up into different pieces because I was like, I don't want to run a business. I want to go do this conflict reporting thing. Started going in that direction, doing some freelancing for Task and Purpose. And I got a History Channel show called JFK Declassified, Tracking Oswald. It was
How was that? Like, how do you go from, and what years was that? So then you had the Havoc Journal, things.
So it was such a fast-paced time. In retrospect, it didn't feel. In retrospect, it was so fast-paced. At the time, it felt like, gosh, I wish I was moving faster. But in that period, I started a blog, 2 blogs that were bringing in. Just one of them is no longer up, but 2 that were bringing in millions of visitors per month. I put out a YouTube video. The first YouTube video I ever put out got over 1 million views. It was this video called "Shit Rangers Don't Say." I produced 2 different films that won multiple film festivals, and all of that just got me in the mix of a bunch of different things. Along the way, I met a manager out in LA that was like worked specifically in a bunch of non-scripted stuff, and so he was the one that put my name out there for this show with History Channel, and I was like, oh, show with History Channel, awesome, And that's where I learned how a production looks, specifically a traveling production, which, as you know, would become very useful later on.
Yeah.
So I did that History Channel show.
What was that? Or what was it called?
JFK Declassified, Tracking Oswald. You can still go watch it. It's like, I think you got to pay for it on History or Amazon or something like that, but you can like rent it from Prime or whatever.
How was that experience, like getting on a History, like that production and everything, a History Channel?
Yeah, that was where I learned what a major network production looked like, and I learned so much and made valuable contacts that were, would help me well into the future, producers and DPs and things like that. It was such a great experience seeing how that worked. And it was, like I said, I'd done a few things on camera. I did that YouTube video, but like that was my first time being really trained in how to be on camera, getting mic'd up and how, the different, it was essentially like a 6-week film school for me, it really, I learned a lot. I learned a lot on the documentary production I did, as well as the scripted production that we did called Prisoner of War. That scripted one was like huge production. It was only a 3-day production, but it was a huge, like 30 people and all the department heads and all. So I learned a lot doing that. But that was scripted. Now I saw the non-scripted side, like sort of the documentary side, and with the travel element built in of like, how do you do, in film world they call it a company move, but like, how do you do that move? How do you pack things up? How's that run and gun setup done? Figured all of that out. It was so valuable. And yeah, we got to bounce around to a couple of different places: Mexico, Key West, New Orleans, a couple of different places like that. And it was great, and I came back from that, and then I got my first embed in Afghanistan with Special Operations Command, and that was for Task and Purpose. Went and did that for a couple of weeks in Afghanistan, which is I'd covered the Standing Rock oil pipeline protest, which was like my first real conflict reporting. And then that story got the attention of a bunch of different people. And that's how I got that Afghanistan embed and went over and did that. And then that got a bunch of people's attention. And so now it's like full on in this journalism world. And came back, and that's about the time that Evan Hafer reached out to me. Black Rifle was really rapidly growing. He was like, hey, what do you think about coming over here and just doing what you do, but for us? And it's like, yeah, great. He asked me, like, well, is there like a budget to like travel? And he's like, yeah, dude, we'll figure that out, and they did. And so I went over and I launched coffeeordie.com for them and later the accompanying YouTube channel. And the first thing that I did when I started with them, this is spring 2018. First thing that I did, go back to Afghanistan for an even better opportunity to go in bed with some of the last troops that were actually in contact, like in getting into firefights.
Now, was that the one that you're on the hill making content?
The Valley Boys video.
Valley Boys. Yeah. Because that's the one that I saw. And I had known you back from in like the soft rep days, way back, like in when I started listening to podcasts in 2013. I was like, oh, Marty Skovlund Jr.
Yeah.
And then I saw you. I was in Kuwait. As I was doing a desk job, and so I got to hop on YouTube a lot. It was like the one thing we could look at, and I watched that video of you in Afghanistan. I was like, holy shit, that's what I would love to do. Yep. Like even as a filmmaker, I was like, that would be awesome to go and film and embed and all that kind of stuff. And so leading up to that, then you had been working with other, like, say, companies, and you're
primarily Task and Purpose.
Task and Purpose.
Yeah, primarily Task and Purpose. I was doing a lot of work with them. My Standing Rock piece, actually, what
year was Standing? Because that was like 2014 or
2016 into 2017.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so 2016 would have been my first real foray into not writing, but like
filming
and reporting.
Yeah, conflict reporting.
Being on camera and stuff. That Standing Rock, but Standing Rock I did to publish on Task and Purpose, but the features editor shot it down because it didn't. Admittedly, it didn't quite align with sort of the talking points that the media was going with. I was one of the few reporters that was able to embed not just with the protesters, but also on the police lines. Like specifically had a relationship that got us through because the police weren't letting anybody through. But we got to go up there and see it from both perspectives. So I was able to write this really, what I felt, very unbiased story about what it looked like on both sides of this. Really, it was like a DMZ out there, and like I said, it got a lot of people's attention. But that editor, when I put it together, he kind of shot it down because he's like, this is, I forget exactly how he characterized it, but essentially called it like fence sitting bullshit, and so I just went and published it on Medium. It got, I forget how many views, probably 400,000 or 500,000 views, which for a long form story, that is very good. Even back then, like that was like, it went essentially viral. Like I said, it got the attention of a lot of different people. Plus I did my own photography, all that. And that was kind of how I was trying to build myself. I was like, hey, not only can I shoot still photos, not only can I get video for a video package, I also can write the shit out of a story, So I kind of tried to build myself as this one-man band that could go out, write, shoot stills, do video, be on camera, do the whole thing. You don't need 4 people. You can just hire Marty, and he'll do it all, and he'll do it at a high level. And I did. I was doing things at a pretty high level.
Yeah. And for kind of like the people that are listening, and I'm a nerd and digging into this too. How is that? I wouldn't say super financially, but when you're selling that, what's that process like selling? And you so you got 5,000 views you put on Medium. Now this was a different world than it is today.
500,000.
500,000. Yeah, 500,000. That was a very different world than what we live in today. But what was that like? Like, were you selling money off ad space? Did Medium give you?
I got zero money.
Zero money for that. So it was just like
I lost money because I paid to go up there myself.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, it's like good there because people are like, oh my god, you must have made good money off that. I was like, no, we don't. Nope, we typically lose money on things. So yeah, okay.
Yeah. I was not. Yeah, No, I had some of the money from the History Channel show, which was not a lot of money either, but it was a couple of like decent checks.
Yeah.
that I had to just make stretch for a very long time.
Because I like talking with people that you've done it, I've kind of done it, but it's like, because people that want to get into it, it's like trying to find an avenue to be profitable or at least break even. That in itself is hard, and it's like, if you're really passionate about it, go after it, but it's almost trying to do it in a smart manner. Even if you are new, like which way is the best way to go? Now, today is different than back in those days because YouTube and, it was just a different world. It's just a different time, different world when it comes to payouts and everything like that. So nowadays, what would be your advice to somebody doing what you did? Because I have my own advice, but I mean, you really live the journal. I don't consider myself a journalist, like a filmmaker. So when I went over to Ukraine, it was like, I'm making a war doc, not a journalist piece. I have my own ways. If I didn't get paid to do it and I wanted to do it, I have certain ways that I would tell people, well, you're going to come out of pocket, but these are ways to maybe make your money back, or you're going to have to do yourself. What would be your advice today?
Yeah, I don't think that the way that I did it is entirely invalid now. It's either, a lot of people that go into journalism, either they come from money and they've got somebody kind of backing them, basically, family, parents, trust fund, something like that. Or a spouse that is working and making good money. That's how a lot of people come into journalism these days. Or the other route is you just be very poor for a very long time. And that's what it was. I didn't make a lot of money. I worked my freaking ass off and tried to be as good as I could. I researched incessantly story structure, how to do these things. I talked to everybody I could. I networked. I would literally hitchhike to places in order to just go meet a person that might be able to help me out down the line. Dude, I worked my tail off and for not a lot of money starting out. And then, you start getting paid from a few different things. Like I said, I started getting freelance, not a lot of money, but, $100 for a task and purpose article and, that sort of thing. You start bringing a little bit there. And then, you take a chance on, like I said, I drove that van that I lived in for a year. I drove that van up to Standing Rock and just lived out of that while I was up there reporting there. And, but that piece kind of put me on the radar. It's like, oh, this guy can write. This guy can go into dangerous situations and behave and, all of that sort of stuff. And then that's what got me the Afghanistan. You're getting noticed. Yeah. Right? And
exposure is almost,
Hey, I know a lot of people don't like to hear it, but being paid in exposure is, depends on where your goals are. Is your goal to make a lot of money right now, or is your goal to be successful in this career down the line? Because there's just not a lot of people are willing to pay unproven journalists. They're not. Like it's really hard. Journalism, period, you're not going to make a lot of money. There's very few people that make really good money in journalism. And a lot of that really good money that gets made is in a major metropolitan area like New York City, where that really good money, that might be a lot of money like here in Minnesota, doesn't go that far in Manhattan, So you got to know what you're getting. You got to do it for the love of what you're doing. And I did, and it led to a bunch of different things, So like I said, Evan reached out. I went and started Coffee or Die, and then grew Coffee or Die to, again, millions of visitors per month, YouTube videos, the Afghan embed series that I did with them. That was the first thing that I did as soon as I got hired. The first video that I put out got, I don't know, it's like over 10 million views at this point, like insane exclusive footage.
And what's the logistics and coordination behind that? Say somebody's watching, like, I want to do what you did.
Be a really good journalist for a long time. Typically, you'll have to be a proven journalist for 10, 15 years before you even get looked at for a combat embed, if they're even available. Like, super rare. And for me, every contact that I had to have proven work, had to have somebody kind of like vouch for me, had to be with a publication that would vouch for a legitimate publication. Like, it's not easy. It's really not easy. And even it takes a lot of leaps of faith.
And even then with you're talking with PAOs and all that, public affairs officers, to even ask the question. And we ran into a little bit too. When we did Vet TV, but we had known a few entities, so it was like, oh, okay, cool. Like Vet TV in itself is a known streaming entity that, when we were, hey, we're willing to come do this, they're like, oh, okay, gotcha. At least you're a media platform,
they're not going to let just you as a freelancer come out there. You have to be associated. You have to have a letter that they literally put into their package that they submit up through their chain of command, saying, from whatever editor or whoever is greenlighting this, saying, yes, this reporter, Marty Skovlund Jr., date of birth, blah, 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 is a staff writer, whatever, for task and purpose or whatever, Coffee or Die, whatever. and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's a part of that. Yeah. So you have to be like a credentialed reporter to do that sort of stuff.
What do you think is the most difficult aspect of what you're doing? You're a one-man band, jack of all trades. What to you is the hardest? Is it the writing? Is the filming? Is it getting locations, production?
Feels like everything was just hard.
Just everything.
Everything was just swimming through cement, you know, like it just, because none of it was easy. And I didn't have a team or anything at that point. Like it was all just me. And yeah, I don't know, man. I worked a lot in those days. Work-life balance was not a thing. You know, and I had a young daughter and a wife, and very, very fortunate that my wife was very supportive of me during that time and cool with me running out around the world and things like that. I mean, I remember when I left for that Afghan embed with Coffee or Die, I hadn't even, like, I was, you know, in a bad place financially. I got on that plane out of Boston to go start making my way to Afghanistan. I had like $7 in my bank account, like, and no company card. It was just like, well, I got the plane ticket, and once I get there, I'm with the military, so I don't really need money. Like, you know, you take these leaps of faith, just like, well, it's a problem for future Marty, you know, is what it is. You know, you have to have the ability to take risk. You know, the people that, again, if they have money saved or they don't have a family and so they can keep a really low overhead and stuff, like there's ways to do it. But for me, I had a wife and kids. I had, you know, our kid at the time, kids now, but kid at the time. You know, like I just, you know, I didn't come from money or anything like that. I just had to go by force of will, make it work one way or the other, you know?
There you go. Force of will.
Yeah.
Well, that's
it didn't
good, man.
come easy. I didn't get anything handed to me.
Yeah, yeah.
know?
Well, that's what I'm saying is like, that's what I mean. Like when people are looking at this, like, yeah, things are different today. I mean, it still comes down to like the passion, still comes down to like, this is what we're trying to do. This is what I'm trying to do. And then, you know, even if if you have money behind you, good on you, you know, but you still got to put that time in.
A little bit more clear path.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you suck or you're not going to work hard. It doesn't matter if you do have money. It's just life is a little bit easier if you're not worrying about where your next, you know, rent payment is going to come from while you're trying to do this really hard thing. That definitely makes it a little bit easier, but it's not easy, even if you do have a little bit of money behind you.
Yeah. That was one of the lessons we were taught in film schools, like, don't ever marry another creative.
Yeah, that's probably really good advice.
Or not so much creative, but marry in the industry, you know? Because my professor was going through a divorce who was like, she was like another filmmaker or whatever. Yeah. He was getting a divorce my first year of film school. He's like, oh, dude. I was like, yeah, man, it was a great year. And he's like, oh, you didn't notice? I was like, I was getting a divorce. I was like, oh, you were? And he's like, oh, he goes, I must have hit it pretty well because my life was falling apart. Yeah. And he goes, never marry another filmmaker, basically. Yeah. I was like, don't worry about that. Yeah. So I always thought it was funny, life advice, when you talk about like, hey, if your spouse, you know, is the one making, you know, or has a career or whatever, like, or, you know.
And it kind of works that way through a lot of different. It's not just journalism.
It's not just journalism.
It's like if you're a book author, things like that. Like most book authors have a day job, you know, unless they're fortunate, you know, their spouse is you know, has their own job that can support the family. Then you can just take time to go write a book. And that can be your full-time job. But a lot of these ventures, especially before you reach a certain level of success, they're not going to support a full-time you know, you know, a full-time employment or support a family or things like that.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, and it's the same way too. I mean, like in the filmmaking realm, I remember doing Amazon Flex and, you know, hey, which bill am I going to pay? Am I going to pay my rent or am I going to pay my cell phone bill? You know, and it's like doing, and then scrounging enough money together to do a commercial spec that made no money, but it would improve your skill and get you. And that we've shot a commercial, made no money, it had gotten us work through the years, and it's still on my reel. And so people are like, "Oh my god, it looks great." The rest of it doesn't look that great, but like those few shots got us into the next thing. And
you just need to, at that, when you're young, when you're just starting off, you got to put the reps in.
Yeah,
you really do. You know, write for whoever you can write for. If you're a writer, you know, go make stuff for whoever you can. If you're a filmmaker, like, don't be too good for anything. If you're just starting out, like, go get the reps in. You know,
exactly. And we mock exposure bucks, but a lot of us are 10 years in and we getting paid for legit
it's
work.
different when you're 10 years in.
Exactly.
It's different when you do have a proven reel to go off of.
Or when clients or somebody goes, well, I'll pay you an exposure. It's like, all right, buddy, I'm not, you don't come to me with exposure bucks. I'll go to somebody, be like,
you can only pay an exposure when you need exposure.
Exactly. Yeah.
When you don't need exposure anymore, you don't get paid in exposure. You get paid in dollars.
Exactly.
Right? That's how that works.
Yeah.
If you've never done anything before though, then you need somebody to give you a chance. And whoever's giving you a chance probably isn't going to pay you to give you that chance. Like probably. There's exceptions. There's always exceptions out there. But like for the most part, you're just going to have to go do some stuff and prove that you're good. And then once you've proven that you're good, you can start charging money, And once you start charging money, it's probably not a lot to start. But you'll be, again, as you grow out, you're going to be able to increase your rates and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I 100% agree with you. I mean, like from where I started to where, I ended up freelancing, it's like, never thought I'd make, or I shouldn't say never thought, but like you're like, oh yeah, cool. It doesn't ever feel like you're gonna get to that point, or because it's 10 years ago, you're like, oh my god, I'm just trying to make $500 on this whole project, and then it's like you're moving up to $1,650, $2,000 a day projects, and people are like, yeah, we'll pay you, and you're like, oh, all right, cool, and then like you're like inside, you're like, oh my god, they're fucking paying me, you're like, of course you're gonna pay me. That.
I was a little bit fortunate at a certain point I got hired on full time at Black Rifle when I launched Coffee or Die, and so then I had that regular paycheck. Which was great.
Which is nothing wrong with that. I think people sometimes are like, oh my god, I'm taking a day job. I was like, well, no, if you're within that career field, that's great. Like I got to do same thing when I worked. That's how we met. At Black Rifles, like I was being a producer, directing all these projects and filming, and like gave me a lot of great reps for future projects. And if that's I think even corporate do. I'll tell people that corporate pays the bills, man. So tons of guys in our field know that. Like you do your passion on off hours, and then corporate pays the bills, like work-life balance, or it's like you just might have to do that to get to the next point. Like it's always sexy when you hear the one story that's like, oh my god, and then that they're at their last dollar, and then that paycheck, and then they blew up, and now they're Quentin Tarantino or some shit. It's like, well, there's a million stories out there where that last dollar doesn't come in, and then that rent doesn't get fucking paid, and then that wife leaves you, and then or that girlfriend leaves you, and then you get kicked out. Like, it's like you got to be a dreamer, but you also got to be practical.
You have to take risks.
And take risks and sacrifice. And sometimes sacrifice is just like, man, it's okay to get a day job. Like you can quit that day job 3 months from now after you save the money. It doesn't mean you have to get pigeonholed.
Take risks, but don't be dumb.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean? Like, don't jump out of the plane without a parachute.
Exactly. I hope I'll make one on the way down.
Take risks for sure. But when somebody's like, hey, I'll give you money via a full-time job, like, dude, maybe you should take that job.
Yeah, take the job, and then, and I tell guys like that too. Sometimes they ask me, I was like, well, then take the job and save up the money, or figure, it's just,
and keep working
and keep working.
You work your day job, and then you guess what? You're working 2 jobs.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Yep, exactly.
My last book, Send Me, The True Story of Mother War, I wrote that while working a very full-time job running Coffee or Die, Free Range America, like this entire publishing department basically out of Black Rifle Coffee. That was a very full-time job.
Yeah.
Lots of employees. I had damn near 30 people under my org at that time. It was a very full-time job, and I was reporting out a very difficult book to write. I just, guess what, didn't sleep a lot,
Exactly, yeah.
I remember you guys would see me, like we did that trip out to South Dakota for that fishing trip, and I'm in the back of the car typing and showing up. I slept 1 hour because I was up writing all night at the lodge and stuff. Like you saw firsthand what that was like for me. It was a fucking stressful period of my life.
Yeah, I know, you guys, all you writers, man. Like I was like, because I'd be up late backing up footage, going over stuff, make sure batteries or whatever. But once you guys were like, you guys then would go off and like write till like 2 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. Like I'd be up too, but I'm like, man, you guys are fucking writing right now, go get some sleep, or or Ethan Rock would be like, and you would be up, Josh, everybody would be up writing until 2, 3 a.m. in the morning.
The job ain't done just when you get off location.
Oh no, exactly.
That's when the job starts, really.
Yeah. I know, and that's like stuff that people need to hear, And I feel like sometimes if I'm not, like I said, not a journalist, but in the filmmaking realm, like for me, I see, everyone's like, oh, just hop on YouTube and do that, thinking that's like the next easy thing. I was like, well, no, you still have to put a lot of effort into it. You still got to put effort and timing and still patience, like if you're building something, you got to stick with it. You got to make it toward, they say for here, I'm running a show on the podcast, but after you get your 21st show, that's like where people ride or die. Like if you can make it? Yeah. It's like 21 is like your ride or die. If you can make it to 21, you're you're most likely going to keep going. Yeah, if
I
you
hadn't
don't-
heard that. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah. It was on. I can't remember his name. Modern Wisdom. He had like all the stats. He's like 21 is like for some reason the magic number of statistically.
Just like I've seen the one before. If you can make it past your 7th year of marriage, it is statistically improbable that you will ever get divorced. Of course, there are people all the time that get divorced after their 7th year.
Yeah.
But statistically, it is extremely unlikely that you'll get divorced.
Yeah.
It's like the lion's share of divorces happen in the first year.
Yeah.
And then like the next biggest category is from like year 2 to year 7.
Mm-hmm.
You make it past year 7, you're probably good. I remember I knew that statistic, and so when me and my wife had like our 8th anniversary, it's like, well, I think we're good. I think we made it. You know?
me and Amanda,
we're coming up on our 16th here in a week. Here,
that's awesome.
so.
Yeah, me and Amanda are 7 this year, so we're good. I have to tell her that.
That can be a little toast.
Yeah. In August, we're like, hey, we made it. So it's over 7 years. We're past 10. We've been together 10. You know. Yeah. And we're like, oh my god, it's been a decade. Like, guess we still like each other.
That's pretty cool.
No, I agree with you. I think it feels like, I don't know, like, so we can kind of talk about this a little bit too before we keep going down the rabbit hole. You know, media in this day and age, like you're in it, especially coming off of, marketing, you did content creation. It's like, I always hate the word content creation. I think it does have a little bit more weight to it now, media content creation.
Well, what we were doing at Coffee or Die was straight up journalism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's like, but when people even say, like, I hate the word videographer, but everyone says the word videographer. It's like, okay, yeah, content creation, journalism, they think of it as just media and content. It's obviously it's still journalism, but it's, but when people talk about like this era, digital has helped a lot. And I think we talked about this before with like Substack and stuff like that, like how things move and evolve with digital media and outreach, like X. You talk about X now, it might be a little more saturated now, but like how people can build platforms and, what have you seen that shift like yourself in like the journalism world? Like maybe people you follow, maybe yourself, maybe, opposed to 10 years ago, not easier to build a following, but you think it's a bit more accessible for people that are new to the game or decide to get into it. Sure.
It's always going to be the people that build a following are ultimately know how to build a following regardless of what the current trends are. That kind of transcends time. I'm convinced Hemingway, when he was doing it, was famous. If Hemingway were here today, he would be just as famous. I firmly believe that you either have it or you don't, and so I think that ability to, get through the tough early days, to work, to become talented and all of that, just that's what happens, and that understanding of like personal brand and things like that, and the work that you put in and getting into the right places and saying yes at the right time, no at the right time. Those are all skills that transcend the platforms. Yes, as it shifted from newspapers and print magazines to digital news consumption, video, obviously podcasts are a big thing now. Social media, all that. Yeah, of course, all those change, but like the ability to build a platform and get yourself out there has not really changed. Is it probably a little bit easier now? Yeah, it's been democratized a little bit. Before there was some really hard gates to get through, and strong gatekeepers. But like just making a movie, for example, right? You can go make a movie on your phone if you really want to. Before you didn't have the option of just go make it on your phone. You had to go rent a camera and go pay for film and enough film to make the movie and then get it there were these things that you just had to pay for and to go do. And now it's like, dude, you could go shoot an entire movie on your iPhone, edit it on your iPhone, submit it to film festivals. If the story is strong, the writing is good, all that sort of stuff, anybody that knows anything about filmmaking will be able to look at them and be like, this person knows how to tell a story. This person knows how to make a movie. They just need money to go make the big thing. You know what I mean? Like, so it's easier now maybe to get in front of people. Anybody, like I did, anybody can start a blog. That's what I did. And that got my name out there. Anybody can publish a book now through self-publishing. How well you do it, all that sort of stuff. Like a big publisher is not going to make you a good writer one way or the other. Yeah, you're going to have the advantage of a good editor over there, things like that. But like a big publisher, a big film studio, they're ultimately working with what you give them. And so you've either got it or you don't. Or you're either willing to work to become great or you aren't, So the tools that you have to work with, the platforms that are out there, all that stuff is kind of like second to, can you put in the work? Can you tell a story? Can you be the person that can go to whatever level and still tell a great story? You know?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the reason I talk was when I was going to film school, I took photography classes too, because I love doing photography, but I also wanted to learn the cameras more. So that's previous summer before I started to like get my GI Bill and make money out summer. So it was like, I went full time. And I was talking with my photography teacher, and I remember her telling me back in this is like the early 90s or like late 80s, early 90s. When she was starting, she also had a classmate, and it kind of made me reflect. And this was 10 years ago. This was back in 2014. And I was I'm still in that mentality. We're both in that mentality of like, yeah, put the work. You got to put the work in this at the end of the day. And you got to have that drive. But I related to it. The story she told me was like, she's like, yeah, she does photography and blah, blah, blah. But then one of her classmates, when they finished, she goes, he took his camera and just went, there's like flooding in Minnesota or something like that. And he just went in. He just like picked all his stuff up and was like, I'm going to go do photography and journals or whatever he was doing, photography, whatever. He goes, I'm not, he just go do it. He went down to the tornado or like the floods or something that happened in southern Minnesota. And he just started taking photos and started getting better and like getting in with the bureaus. And at that point she was like, oh yeah, now he's one of the, what they call it, like the main heads of like Asia in National Geographic. He was like a department head or whatever you call it, not the case manager, but whatever. Basically, he's like the head dude in Asia for National Geographic as one of their like directors in that area. And I was like, and I thought it was like, yeah, he took off and just did it. Yep. It's like, we have all these new platforms now, and I think everybody that's, who knows if it's a younger or maybe an older audience that's just like, well, I want to go try something new. It's like, it still comes down to how much determination you have, how much hard work you're going to put in, and you're just balls to the wall and just grinding it out. At the end of the day, exactly. Put your best foot forward and you got to keep moving. Does it come a little, I think me and you know way more, and we're 10, 15 years into this game. So we're like, okay, yeah, we know the things you just don't know now, but you don't know because you don't know. Like coming off, I don't know what I don't know coming out in 2016 in film school. I just don't know. I was like, how did this work? How does this work? How do we connections here? How do we? Until you just put the time in, you got to put the reps in.
Things that I'm doing now, I couldn't have. That were only a dream when I was starting out. And I wish I could have, skipped straight to having. I've got one of the best literary agents out there. I'm repped by CAA now. I've got my last book going into it's going into production. Like these are things that I could have only dreamed of happening, 10 years ago. And it's a long process, but it was every step of the way that one thing led to the next. And you just have to kind of like trust the process a little bit and just trust that, like, if I just don't quit, if I just keep working hard, I will get to where I want to go. And if I don't, then it was never meant to be. Yeah. You need to go find a different line of work.
Yeah. Well, also too, I think what's funny too is like, everybody wants to be the next social media or whatever, like, I think that's a bit of a false dichotomy when people are like, well, they got like 100,000 followers. It's like, yeah, it doesn't move anything. Or, it's like, yeah, that's true. But you take,
it depends. You can go make a living off 100,000 followers.
You could, but I'm saying is like when people like, I've been approached and we've talked with people as well. It's like, but that doesn't move the needle for like what we're trying to do. It's like, that's cool. But, depending on which field you're in, it may or may not move the needle. It still comes down to, that popularity isn't necessarily like, and even then, it's popularity. Yeah, it's social media, but it doesn't mean that you bring something to the table. In an over, like.
Do you mean like as a filmmaker or a journalist?
Or like, possibly, depending on what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like in our field, like I think the generation is like, well, if I can get 50,000 followers, or maybe 100,000, then people will give me money to do something.
Doesn't have anything to do with it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying is like you kind of run into that and you're like, no, man, like I go filmmaker guys that are doing what I love to do. Do they have 3,000 followers, 2,000? Like who cares? It's like their Facebook. Like who cares? So it's like I think people really have to hone in on what you want to do and don't be distracted by, I don't want to say media, but sometimes it is like, don't worry about getting in your head with, oh yeah, if I don't have so many followers, I don't have this or that. You know, it's like,
well, if you think you need a certain amount of followers, then go do what you got to do to
exactly,
go get the followers.
Exactly. If that's going to work in your favor.
If that's what you think is going to help put you over the edge, you know, like, okay, then go do it.
Yeah.
Like, figure out how to do it. It's no different than anything else.
Yeah.
You know, it's whether you're selling yourself a book, a movie, or anything, it's still just selling, you know, like, and it's still just trying to sell that you have a talent, that you are valuable to, you know, a publisher or whatever. And if you can't get a publisher on board, then you just go publish yourself, like I did. Put my Standing Rock story on Medium. And then you go show that there's a market for this sort of stuff, like I did, you know. So again, it's not, there's a creator that I follow on Instagram, and he always says it's not easy, but it is simple. Don't overcomplicate it. I love that.
Yeah, we do.
I love that.
The one I follow is more filmmaking, was write, shoot, repeat.
Yeah.
Just write, shoot, repeat.
Yeah.
That's what they got to do. Simple, but it's hard.
It's hard, but it is simple.
Yeah. No, I agree. I know. I think that's the fun part. Like talking with you about it, like you're a successful author, you got a lot of stuff going on. You know what I'm saying? Like you're excited. You got a story that's going in production. Like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's where I'd love to be. You know, like film and stuff like that, and making documentaries, and because that's what, you know, we were talking about Sebastian Younger earlier, but like that's what really, like, I don't consider myself a journalist, but like that war doc aspect, like that was a big inspiration for me. And then you went to Afghan before we knew each other. I was like, I would love to get in and do that. Not saying that's my career, but it's definitely something I want to do. And we pushed me and Chris were, you know, this is a little bit later on, and this is where we have built more credentials. Okay, we're going into a war zone, so to get the approval of my wife, we needed, you know, some money behind us, but we kept pushing, kept, you know, going like, hey, we need to, you know, get this in front of people, proposals, all this stuff. And then finally one broke, you know, and we managed to go and make the story that we wanted to go make.
Yeah. And you and I got to go get dinner in Lviv.
Yeah. That was, after, well, that was a different time, but, but
you did a couple of trips.
Yeah.
But no, we, you and I, not for the same entities, but we both met up in Ukraine. What was that, 2 weeks after Russia invaded? I mean, really quick.
I literally like later thought about, I was like, Jesus, that was, because I was like looking at the time frame I was editing like last year. I was like, we were there. I left on my birthday, like March 12th. Like I turned 35 or something like that. I don't remember. I think Finn was not even a year old. And I was like, we had my there's a photo of me with my birthday cake, because I love ice cream cake. It was like me and Amanda having a cake. My parents are there. They took the photo. And then I got on a plane to Poland to go into Ukraine like 2 hours after that.
Yeah.
It was like, what, you know, like in my head, I'm like, holy shit, this was like 2.5 weeks after the invasion. And I remember I tell people about that. I was like, dude, you going in, the feeling was like we didn't know what was going to happen. We had E&E routes out of Lviv.
We were intentionally going to Lviv because we had Jericho was up in Kyiv, Nolan Peterson was down in Kremenchuk. Yeah. And so we had the kind of the Cough Your Die crew spread across the country in different areas. Me and Josh were intentionally going to Lviv because at that time this is again early in the invasion. We still thought Russia was going to push down into Western Ukraine we still thought Russia was going to push into Western Ukraine from Belarus, north going south, and wanted to be there for that when that inevitable resistance would bump up against them to defend Lviv. So we thought we were going to be there for that. That ended up not happening, but we were there for some ballistic missile attacks, and we were there for, you know, I mean, I'll never forget going to funerals for Ukrainian soldiers and things like that there. I mean, it was
wild.
I mean, we came out unscathed, but you didn't know that going into it. Like, you didn't know if you were going to end up being behind Russian lines if they did take Lviv, and as an American, and like, you didn't know. Yeah.
I remember we were helping evacuate people, and it was just like, dude, the amount of intel flowing in, and like we were dealing with that, and it was just like, holy God. And that was a volunteer effort. That wasn't even for the filming effort, you know, later on. But that was a whole, but again, you're going to just go. You know, we found a way, we made it happen. But I talked to you before I left, you know, and you're like, you'll never regret going to Ukraine to help evacuate people with an NGO. And I was like, okay, that's my last like straw. that was like, because I talked to you on the phone. I was like, I'm gonna try to make this work, and you're like, and I was like, I'm just gonna leave, and you're like, go for it.
Probably reckless advice on my part, but
well, it was good because I knew you guys were like going to go, you know, and I was like, all right, I gotta, you know. consult with Marty because I know you were probably going to be heading in. I don't know if you because we were at that one film shoot with Rally Ready.
I feel like I talked to you about that while I was in Poland. I hadn't gone into Ukraine yet.
You're right.
I was in Poland
because I was on the phone with you. Yeah, that's right. I was on the phone with you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what it was. Yeah, and I was like, yeah, because you guys were already in, right?
I think that if I remember correctly, when I talked to you, I think I was in Poland getting ready to cross the border into Ukraine.
Okay, all right. And then I met up with you a week later then?
Yep.
Yeah. Because that was like a week later than I took off. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, that's kind of like one of those stories like, hey, just go. Just get out there and go. Granted, that can lead us into a kind of a different conversation. I've seen the Ukraine war, kind of that's one of the reasons I asked you with the journalistic stuff, but like you're seeing a lot of bones kind of being made, or if they want to, or the guys that stuck it out, but trying to do combat journalism where,
that needs to be the caveat here, right? Like, don't think that just anybody should be going into a war zone.
Yeah.
You're either going to get yourself hurt or somebody else hurt. It's different when you're talking about, like, I was an experienced conflict reporter at that point. It was not my first war zone, not just in uniform, but also as a reporter, not my first time, right? It was your first time as a reporter, or you weren't even doing that. But you had definitely been to war zones before.
Yeah.
You were a former Marine. Like, you know how to conduct yourself in a dangerous environment. That doesn't mean that every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there that wants to get into conflict reporting should be jumping into the nearest war zone that they can find. That's a good place to get yourself hurt or somebody else hurt. Like there needs to be that sort of caveat there of like, go take chances. Go do guess what? The first thing that I did as a conflict reporter wasn't overseas. It was in my own backyard in North Dakota, going up to Standing Rock, where it wasn't a shooting. There wasn't ballistic missiles or RPGs or things, or IEDs for that matter, right? Like, that was my first conflict reporting. That had been after I'd already been to war 5 times. That was the first thing that I did. And then from there, I built up to going to Afghanistan, yes, but it was in a very controlled environment in Afghanistan. And then from there, I went back, and it was, a lot dicier. But I didn't jump straight into, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
And that's what people need to remember is like, if you're just starting, if you decide today you want to be a journalist or a conflict reporter, your next step shouldn't be to fly into Gaza or Ukraine or someplace like that. You need to start by covering a protest here in the U.S. And figuring out if you even have the stomach for it. You know what I mean? Like it's like start with that and then start to work your way up. And by the way, a protest domestically is a good way to start to build your sort of resume so that a publication will trust sending you over to one of these places. And you have to show, by the way, it's not just, can you be safe? Can you notice? It's, can you do accurate reporting? Can they trust the stuff that you're sending back? Because that's how news organizations get sued for defamation and things like that. As if a green reporter goes over and isn't doing good reporting and sends back stuff that turns out to be entirely true or misinterpreted, despite their best efforts and intentions, but they are just too new to know that they were being manipulated. Because people try to manipulate reporters. It happens.
Yeah. So
it's not just getting experience in dangerous situations. It's getting experience reporting in dangerous situations. So that's a big part of it too.
No, I agree with you. No, 100%. Because I know it's a different, Ukraine's a different type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, especially in the beginning, a lot of people wanted to go over and, now they're going to cut their teeth, which is, hey, fine. But I know we were talking with a lot of units over there because we were doing more than just reporting and trying to help, and especially in the early months. And again, you got to stick with it. It's more than just the quick little Instagram, like reel. It's like a lot of those people burned out, or a lot of people just didn't have it, or the same thing as they were getting into dangerous areas and then they were getting flagged by the Ukrainian military. Like, this person's never coming back, you know, because they were doing stupid shit, or they wanted to get some, they just turned the cell phone on, or they were doing stuff they weren't supposed to be doing in that area, So that's what I'm saying is, like, I feel like Ukraine did open up a little bit of that window if you wanted to cut your teeth. But at that same moment, I agree with you. It's like, go cover some other stuff before you spend the money and go in, because you can get on that
I
ticket.
don't
and go,
think that Ukraine is the place to cut your teeth.
Yeah, don't cut your teeth there.
Like that is not the environment. That's varsity.
Yeah,
you need to know what you're doing there.
Especially in the beginning. That was, I mean, we had no idea what was going on. Like Kyiv was like, we don't even know if it's going to stand in the next few weeks.
Exactly.
Like, it was like,
that was not the place for a new reporter to go try to.
Because even now,
figure things out.
now they vet more. Because I know guys that keep going back in, and they built the rapport over the last 3 years. And now we went last year, but we also had rapport for 2 years before we even went in.
And when we went and we were credentialed through the Ukrainian MOD.
Yeah. Well, you had Nolan there for a while, right?
Yeah, we had Nolan living in the country.
Yeah, he lived. Yeah, and he was already reporting.
But then we, like, independent of that, we went and applied for certification there, and we're credentialed through the Ukrainian MOD to be in the country.
Yep, same with us too. Yeah, we got credentialed.
That was a big part in just keeping us safe. You know, we had to show those credentials multiple times because the Ukrainians, especially at the time, peak paranoia about Russian infiltrators and things like that. So if you didn't speak Ukrainian, you were immediately suspect. It wasn't just Russians we were worried about. It was being also worried about just Ukrainians and their counterintelligence service and things like that. Of like, we didn't want to end up in a fucking basement somewhere, you know, like.
Yeah, there's no rules over there. I remember especially that time.
There's another reason why it's not the place for somebody that just decided they wanted to go into this line of work to go to. Like, that was the varsity. That was the varsity team over there. You had to know what you were doing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And this thing too is, I mean, I remember some guys wanted to go into after October 7th, good friends of mine, they were like, oh, we're trying to go something. Yeah, we're gonna go in. And I'm like, you're not going to get in with the, I mean, Ukraine's one way to cover something. I was like, the IDF, they're not going to let you go anywhere. I mean, they're going to, the political volatility of all that is like super high as it is. Like, IDF will not let you go into Gaza.
Well, they're going to look and say, like, have you ever even covered Israel before?
Yeah.
If you haven't, if this is your first time even reporting on this topic, why would we think you're going to know anything about even the right questions to ask while you're over here?
But I'm saying is, like, you wouldn't even, like, at least Ukraine, you can go and you can, like, maneuver towards the front, like, whatever. It's like, they have a bubble around Gaza. You're not getting through that.
You really couldn't. That was part of the reason we ended up pulling chocks early and coming back, because freedom of maneuver was very limited there. Even as a credentialed reporter, you were very limited. Yeah. And that was, we were credentialed through the MOD, and part of that was because we had a track record of reporting on Russia, Ukraine. If you've never reported on it before, they're not going to credential you. Same thing with Israel. If you just decide today that you want to go cover because there's a hot war now, you're like, no, where were you the last 2, 3, 5 years? You know, the people that have been like covering it, that they already have a relationship because they've been back and forth with the IDF's PAOs and things like that. Like, oh yeah, this person's been covering this situation for a long time, and now they want to come over and see what's going on. Yeah, that makes sense. You, who just picked up a pen for the first time yesterday, look, oh, I want to go there because it's war, and you want to do what essentially is like war tourism. Like, that's not going to fly. They're not going to want to deal with some American that got themselves killed over there and causes a PR disaster.
Yeah. Like, and it was, my buddy was great too. I was like, hey man, like, I know you're trying to get stories, or like he's getting personal stories, getting other stuff too. But I was like, he wanted me to come with, and I'm like, yeah, but I told him, I was like, I love you, but I don't think you're gonna, like, it'll be a good trip for you. But I was like, we're not gonna be able to get any of the footage I know that we want to get, because we can't get in. We just can't get into the combat. Like, we can't. Like, it's just because, and they hadn't even invaded Gaza yet. This was like early, just, it was funny too. And he was like, oh, cool. And he got some good stuff, but he told me, he's like, yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a bust, but he goes, he left, and then the next day they invaded. So he was already like on his way back. And he's like, oh man, I was like, well, they weren't going to let you in anyways, but it was funny that the day you left, that they invaded the day after you left. But, but he's good now. He's gone back to Ukraine, and he's cutting his teeth, and he's doing really well. But yeah, it's, it's one of those things, like talking with you, because it's like, you've done it, you've gone in, what's that path like? Because there's not a lot of people out there. There's not a lot of information about that, other than people saying, "Hey, I jumped in." But back in the day, I remember being like, "Well, how did Sebastian Younger get into the units and go?" And was it 2007 or 8? And they were there and embedded.
He'd already been a conflict reporter for 13 years at that point.
Well, Harrington was, for sure. Was Younger though?
Yeah, Younger was going into Africa with militias back in the mid 90s. Like, he embedded with the Taliban in the late 90s. Like, he was an experienced conflict reporter by the time he embedded with the 173rd. in there. Like that's the thing. I run into that a lot too. People think like, oh yeah, he just, man, I wish I could get in embed like younger. Like, okay, go do 12, 13, 15 years before you do that. Like he was covering genocide and things like that in Africa, like long before that. He'd already seen more combat than most people in the U.S. military by the time he went and started embedding in Afghanistan.
Yeah, because that's what it's like. I remember seeing that, and it's like, and even then, I'm like, logistically, how do you make? My mind's like, well, where does he get the food? Where does he get the credentials? How much data do you need? You're there. Where do you charge your batteries? Like, I started thinking of like all that kind of stuff. So now that we're doing like this, and we're talking, it's like, how do you do that? Like, what is nerd question? What's your loadout? What are you carrying? What lenses? What do you recommend? What's your batteries?
Well, as you know, I know this was a source of disagreement between you and I a couple of different times. You definitely lean on the larger package there, but I was very much I need everything to fit into a backpack. I need to have a primary and a backup camera, even if that backup camera is a cell phone or a GoPro, but I need to have at least two means of getting footage. I need to have enough batteries. I need a way to charge those batteries. So that means I need to have a converter thing that allows me to plug into foreign outlets. I also, at a certain point, picked up a little solar panel thing that I could use, a little mini travel solar panel thing. You had to have a couple of different types of lenses, a couple of ND filters, things like that for that. And then I would typically... I started off with a Sony A9 because that was my first stills camera, and that's just what I had. That's what I filmed all the Afghanistan stuff with, but you can't shoot an S-Log or anything with that. So the footage isn't the best, but guess what? With combat footage, people don't care if it's great footage. If it's better than grainy GoPro stuff, they're like super stoked about it. So that's what I started with, but then I eventually moved up to a Sony A7S III that did allow me to shoot in S-Log and do some different things and have a little bit greater dynamic range. So I had that, and then an A7 IV as a backup. And I would bring my main sort of like A cam that I would run around with was that A7S III on a Gorilla Pod with a Rode mic and a Sony GM 24-70. That was my main run and gun. If I'm just picking up one thing, it's that and a fanny pack with extra SD cards and batteries, and I'm off. That was it. Yeah. My larger, and I used Atlas backpacks, which are fantastic. They're big, like backpacking backpacks, but are made for people carrying camera equipment. Yeah. And so that's what I'd carry with, and that would have my extra cameras in it, my extra stuff, my laptop, all of that, my external hard drives to dump footage, all that. Use like a Lacy drive back then, but now it's like go get an SSD. That's going to be a little bit more safer for your footage, and all of that. And so yeah, that's what it looked like. But and I would, for a long time there, depending on the area, I would also bring a drone with me. Some places you couldn't fly drones, but the places that I could fly drones, I would bring a drone with me. And that really helped get some great footage and add a little bit of production value to it for those like establishing shots in a documentary and that stuff. And then, from there, I got really good at being creative and understanding my camera, its limitations, how to work within those. I'll use one example. Do you remember when we were out covering the Marine Corps Recon Sniper course at Camp Pendleton there? Brand new course, all that sort of stuff. The PAOs didn't want to stay out at night because they were like, you're not going to get footage. And I remember like some of the people that we were with like didn't want to stay out. And it was like, and everybody was tired and stuff. I wanted to stay because like, I know I'm going to get the shot. So what I did, you, Ethan, the PAOs, everybody went back. I stayed out there with those guys, and what I did was it was pitch dark out there, but I knew that it was a clear sky, so there were stars. So what I did is I put on a 50 1.4 that was manual. It didn't even have autofocus. And then I got down on the ground and shot going up so they were silhouetted by the sky with it fully opened up. And I just had to manually focus it the entire time. And it was grainy because I had to pump ISO to, whatever. But man, you remember seeing that footage, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I did that night.
Out.
I did the night patrol with the A7S III because I went out there. I think you covered the next night. Yeah. And no, I agree. And this is the nerd camera talk. And I think I'm glad we're covering this because a lot of people talk, the theory, but it's like, how do we do it? I'm the guy of like, cool. I know film. I don't need to write about it. I want to make film. So I'm with you. So that's what Mike and I am a fan of the big camera package. I do have it over there,
Yeah.
but I haven't touched that in 2 years because I've been using Sony. So this year's the year I invest into Sony because I've been renting them for 2 years.
Yeah.
Finally can be like, all right, I'll invest. But no, I'm with you. The when I went into Ukraine, I was like you, so I had 3 bodies. I rented at the time the A9 III had just come out because I was getting, this is all technical nerd stuff, but if you're listening and you're like, well, I want to know how to do this, is how you do it. One, you can rent them. So I highly recommend renting because these are, if you start investing, you can go for it, but rental, just figure out, lensreynolds.com. That's how we did it but the new A9 III had come out with the global shutter and the 120 frames a second. So I rented that. We didn't really use it, but I was hoping to get the artillery piece. I thought we were going to be able to film dudes ripping the 105s or whatever. And so I was like, I want to be able to freeze time and get that. So that was one body. The other 2 bodies were the A7 S3s because the low light capabilities, because you're going in and out of buildings. I am a wider aesthetic, so 16 to 35, because I want my viewers to see the world around us. So that's why that 24 to 70 is really good. Everyone typically use 24 to 70 because that 70 you can punch in, get that really good 2.8, compressed image. But the 16 gets me the world, and that's what. So when I go into a building, I want to see what's in the I want to see what's around me. So that's at least my aesthetic. So I do the A7S III 16 to 35 2.8. And yeah, the same thing you did. So I each camera had its own external battery or basically the travel battery pack. So you can buy that charges cell phones 16 times or a laptop 5. So buying those battery packs, we took them out the Izium, we didn't even, sometimes we used outlets, but we're just use these because that's what they're there for. And that charged our batteries. Same thing. Yeah. I had the backpack. I had a Mind Shift, and then I can't remember what the other brand is. It looks a little more tactical, but it's the same thing. And yeah, I carried the Rode mics. I did the hybrid with the XLR, so I could run mics and the boom mic. Grant, we were doing more video, but the reason I go A7S III over FX3, even though I'm a cinematographer and director, more on the video side, I can switch over in a heartbeat to photo. So that dial. And this is when you start getting technical, you start knowing your equipment very well. I can take a really great looking photo in this moment, switch it back, and now I'm back into video mode. You can't do that FX3s because they're mainly for video. Also, weird quirk, the A7S III allows you to shoot 4K 120 with audio, not in SNQ, but in the regular movie mode. Huge. People don't realize that. Because you could be, especially in conflict reporting, you kind of anticipate the shots. I'm sure you kind of think that way too. I'm in this scenario. Maybe I should record 4K 120 because if we get into a firefight or say something happens, I have audio, I have a great visual, I'll just play it back normally. Or we get into something, boom, I can go into slow motion, and now you really enhance the scene.
And that's where I think it was imperative to have your presets dialed in.
Yep, exactly.
Know exactly what kind of presets you're going to want to have ahead of time, and then literally it's just like doing mag changes or something. You drill those presets so that you know how to switch back and forth. That's why I like that Afghan embed. I've had literally people think that stills that came out of that were just screen grabs. I'm like, nope. That was a still. I was going back and forth between 24 frames a second, 120 frames a second, and stills. Back and forth through the entire time because my presets were dialed. And I the whole time was just cycling through, and I got a lot of stuff to work with. Some photos that I am very proud of to this day.
Same with me with Ukraine. Same way, I doing not the vlog style, but talking to the camera, we're doing video, and then it's boom, I switch over because I have to make it for the doc that we did. It's cool, get my B-roll shots, and then boom, I switched over, and now I'm in my photo mode. And the ND filter is huge because if you are switching back from 120 to 30, because that's why my dial set was photo 4K 24, 4K 120, and so you have 4K 24. Obviously lets more light in, so then you switch your, you just get used to boom.
That's why having a variable ND is so key. You can't just use the fixed one. You've got to have a variable ND.
Exactly. Yep. Variable ND. Shoot that right into your expose. Right. You know how far you get to know the camera so well that it's like the back of your hand. You know, and I agree with you. So that's, our advice, or at least I know there's Canon shooters out there. I'm sure the Canon shooters, the Sony was just the low light capabilities. Because when we filmed in the Embed series, the Russian ballistic missiles getting intercepted, and this is have your kit ready, and we were ready for it because obviously in Kyiv they're always getting hit with missiles. So I had a 24-114 lens, 24 millimeter, a set to the camera. All I had to do was switch it on because I had it exposed already for outside our balcony when we were staying at Airbnb, and we did. We woke up, I grabbed the camera, flipped it on, pressed record, and it's like of great. It's like the image is great. Like it's just because it's coming. It's like not just a cell phone. It was an actual sensor and. The light illuminated. It's 1.4, 24 millimeter. You start knowing the basics like cameras. Like 24 millimeter isn't like super. Even at a 1.4, it's a shell depth of field. But when it goes out further, it's still a wider angle lens. So the aesthetics aren't like a 75 millimeter. Where it's like this much is always in focus or whatever you're doing. But it's sometimes knowing that equipment. You're like, okay, cool. That it. We turn it on and it goes, and you're recording, and you're capturing. That's how we managed to capture. The Patriots intercepting ballistic missiles, So it's, I think it's just on the technical point when people are, fumble fucking like, oh, what works best? Well, whatever. Like I would never take a Blackmagic camera into a war zone, you know what I mean? Or like, but Sony's or Canons, but it's like fun talking with you. It's like, when, these are the questions I've always wondered because they used to, back in the day, there was a separation between camera and video photo and video. It's like, well, here's my video camera, whatever, Panasonic or, it was more the Handycam days. And then you had your stills and then, things started to then hybrid to where you can do both with the same camera.
Again, that's the way I saw I thought that was my unique selling point is, hey, you don't need to hire a video guy, a stills guy, and a writer. Hire me, I'll do all three. I could do all three. I learned all three at a high level. And that to me was like my unique selling point. Is it hard and stressful to be out there doing all three? Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. It sucks. A little bit.
Right away, John, the CEO of that TV, is like, oh yeah, I he's like, well, what else do you need? I was like, I need another guy out here. And he's like, yeah, I get that, because he saw me doing like the photo, the video, the B-roll, like the edit that's happening in my head, like the questions, and
then you throw in having to go write a dispatch at the end.
Yeah. I was like, I just need a B cam, like a B cam, because we're doing more video. So I was like, just another B cam would be great, or whoever and whatever. But I was like, but that's in a perfect world. And then that's not much to ask for. If you look at some productions, like, oh, 2 camera operators, that's nothing. Even though what we're doing, it's like, well, I had 1 camera operator, and then they helped and assisted with some shots here and there. But it's like it's a lot.
Yeah. When I went out and covered Best Ranger, there was a 25-person crew from like ESPN or something that was out there. And I was literally running circles around that. Literally running. Like I was running in between points, running with the competitors, all this stuff, getting all this stuff. And then you looked at their product at the end of it, and you look at mine, and everybody that watched, like especially at the Ranger school, like the people that run Best Ranger competition, they're like, yeah, yours actually was a lot better. Because I was getting all those like slow motion shots and all whereas they were like setting up tripods and stuff. And I'm sitting here down on the ground doing like a little panning shot. Like there was movement in all of my shots, slow motion, regular, all that other stuff. And it was like, I was one person out there. Did I go back and sleep real well at the end of each night and like be just completely drenched through in sweat? And like, absolutely.
Do you look like a weirdo doing it? Yes, you did.
1,000%.
Yep. I know how that feels because I'm the same way. Like you get out there, it's like, I'm going to get this shot and I'm going to get underneath and I want to like, until they tell me to back off, I'm going to get the shot that I'm seeing in my head, and that does separate you because, I'm sure the ESPN guys, those are like, well, they pay us much money. We throw stuff them on sticks and then you film that direction, you pan over and then we're done. Like, whereas like guys like us are like, no, we can get in there. We can do this. We can make it,
There's almost like a professional pride in like, okay, they got like 25 dudes and all the equipment in the world out here. It's almost like a competitive thing of like, I'm going to go make a better final product than they do. Yeah. Me by myself versus 25. It's almost like that competitive, like, when you're in the military and you're out on a ruck or something, you're like, I'm going to beat that guy.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to beat the next guy. And you just keep, you keep going forward. It's that same competitiveness. If there's anything that you take from the military into a career like the one that I've had, it's that competitiveness to just try to be better than the person next to you or those the other people that are out there,
Yep.
When I, even from a writing perspective, I would go out and, when I'd find out, oh, this X person from the New York Times was out here before me or something, like, well, mine's going to be better. When I wrote that story on Shannon Kent, I knew, because Joe told me that, I was writing a story on Shannon. So was the New York Times. So was the Washington Post. So was Stars and Stripes. I was like, I'm going to write the best out of all of them, Arguably, I think I did.
Yeah.
But that's, of course, I'm a little bit biased. I'm a little bit biased, but.
No, I'm with you too, because I think that was like when I went into Ukraine to go film. Part of me is like, I saw what Marty did, but I want to do something better. Or not. It's like, not to be like to be better, but it's just like in my way that I know is going to look cinematic. The way, like, it's going to separate itself from, because Cappy went task and purpose. Real, I don't say, he went in and he did some good interviews, but very straight shot.
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool, we got it. Where it's like for me, it was like, no, I'm gonna get the emotions of these stories and these beats, and like, and I will tell it through a filmmaking lens, like that. And I kept talking to John. I was like, I hate to say it, was like, we're not journalists, we're filmmakers. Remember that, like, so when we come back with this product, I'm gonna put all the extra effort into boosting the emotion of this story with basically a cinematic, like a cinematographer, like, and it is, and it's like, when the final product came in, and people were just like, holy shit, like, like getting, where the flags are, I'm sure it was different, I'm sure when we were there, but like when we went to Kyiv now, there's all the flag square, the Maiden Square, and there's a lot more visuals there, but like really connecting those dots to make that emotional impact in the piece, and like getting all that stuff together. Even like people, I took a photo of like it was a elephant that was in this blown out school, and like I remember I showed it to some people and put it up on socials too, and I even have it like on video, and they're like, oh, did you place that there? I was like, no, I mean, that's like the haunting, beautiful part, of like war. You're just like, it's like there's this elephant stuffed animal that's been sitting there, and it's like clearly this school is taking a beating. It was like the stairwells were caved in, the holes blown through. We had to climb into it. There was no like opening to it, like the doors and like the stairs were all, we had to climb through like a window and get in, like, and check this place out. And it was like haunting, but it's like, and it's like, and for me, that's where you got to get in, you got to find those angles, like, and not just like oh, cool, here's the master shot and interview and we're out, which is fine. People do that, which is fine. But if you want to separate yourself, you got to go that extra mile, definitely actually extra few miles. Like it's a lot of work, and I think when, I think the technology, let's talk about a little bit more in the nerd specs. Like I feel like it's a little more accessible, I guess you would say, like the looks, because the 5D Mark II back in the, back in like 07, 08. And there was my buddy, they were in Korngal, and I still have the footage. I have to bring it up. He had I think it was the 5D Mark II or 3. It might've been the Mark II, but that's when they started doing the 24p film, like you could video on the camera. And the footage he showed me, dude, that stuff still looks amazing to this day, because it's like shallowed up the field. He's at like 16. You could tell it's like wide, and he had like it was a stabilizer, but it was the old school like mechanical one where it had like a little weight. It was really small, but apparently that's what he said he had. And so they're in a firefight running through the Korngal, like on one of the high roads, and he's like looking behind almost. And so they're running forward, and they're like, my buddy's running side by side with the dude. It's like amazing footage. It was on Fox News for like 3 years. I can't remember the guy's name that actually shot it, but like it was like he sold the footage. And so my buddy Conroy and Madding, I saw them for about 2 to 3 years, just like on Fox News. Every time I go to the gym, they're like, war in Afghanistan. It would just be them in the same firefight from 5 years earlier. But
I love that file footage.
Oh, dude, it was great. It was, it was great. I mean, it was like gorgeous footage. Like I have I have like the like super condensed down 720 version of it. And it was like, it was like it looks like a string out to send to Fox or whoever. Like it's like bunch of clips together, and it's like amazing. I mean, like looks so good, And so I think that the technology aspect of that kind of, we talk about little tech nerd stuff, but it's like you're running with the 24-70 2.8. You know, we have access to all these lenses and we know how to use them, and then the sensors, and they only got better. And like the A7S III, I think that's why a lot of people talk about this, and we are talking about more tech specs, but that's why I wanted to bring you, obviously we're talking is it's more than just the theory of things, it's how we make it happen, and like, how do you get that low light shot? Well, A7S III has this low base ISO. You got to know your equipment, because sometimes, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but you run into people like, I don't know how they do it. They just do it. And it's like, well, that doesn't help me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, but how do they film it? Well, I don't know. The guy just showed up with something. He just did it. It's like, well, how do we do that? Like, cause like you and me, it's like, I have to do this myself because I can't hire somebody to do it for me. So how do I get this shot?
And I just take like that personal, professional pride in I can do it myself.
Exactly. Yeah. Same. Yeah.
That's there's something satisfying about knowing that you went out there and got this amazing footage. You were able to put this amazing product together, and you did it. Just you out there grinding and knowing your equipment, knowing how to tell a story, knowing. Both visually and in my case also through the written word, and knowing how to do all that stuff. And there's a little bit of pride that comes from knowing you can do that, Yeah. It's been able to tell a lot of cool stories over the years though. And it wouldn't have been possible to get them in all the different mediums that I've been able to get them without knowing the equipment, practicing on it, going out. I mean, just to learn how to edit on Premiere Pro, I went out and just filmed like a vlog series with my daughter, or just around New Hampshire where I live, and forced myself to just edit a full 8-minute video every single day for like 2 weeks straight, just to get the reps in and force myself to learn Premiere. Like I would just force the function, and that would work. And then, when you learn how to edit, then you know how to shoot better too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like,
And that's the thing too, is a lot of people don't know how to edit. I'm a very good editor. So like when I'm out there shooting and people are like, what are you doing? Like, and I'll be like, this is for like, I shoot for the edit because I know what my edit's going to look like. And even
all the different inserts that you're going to need, and you're going to
transition inserts to,
exactly.
Ins and outs.
If you can learn all that stuff, I mean, you're just going to be more of an asset. The stuff that you get is going to be better.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people overlook that, because that's how I started making my money in like right out of film school, is editing. I was a pretty good editor just kind of out the gate. Cause I had done editing stuff in like high school. Cause that was the only, it's like, and I'd do like the montage, do whatever for film school projects. And then I would do edits for our unit moto videos, like for 3.3. And then, in film, like I enjoy editing. I'm like a weirdo. Like I really like love editing. So that's where it's like, I started like, cause no one wanted to touch editing. Cause they're like, whatever, I love shooting, but I'll, so it was funny running into like DPs that like couldn't edit for the, their way out of a paper bag, but they're phenomenal shooters. So you're like, oh, okay, cool. I get to take this amazing footage and create something out of it. And then they're like blown away. They're like, oh my God, this is like so good. I was like, well, I just know how to edit, but
I don't like, I know how to go into Premiere and do some basic edits. I'm not like I'm definitely not at your level as a film editor. I know how to use the program. I know how to do simple cuts and put a simple package together.
But it's something though, like
that sort of thing. I don't particularly enjoy it like you do. I really like editing stills though. I love going into Lightroom and editing stills. There's something like therapeutic about it for me. I really enjoy editing stills, but video I don't particularly care for. Like I do it when I need to. But for stills, I love going in and just spending an afternoon going through and editing a batch of stills. I love it.
Yeah, and that's like, I'm not as a fan of it, but I do love it because I do love doing photography.
Yeah,
it was the weirdest thing. Again, I love my professor. I don't know why he ever said this to me, but he goes, oh, I was like, yeah, I'm taking photography right now, because I was like, I figured it would help me with my cinematography, right? And he goes,
and I think that's accurate.
Oh, 100. Well, I don't know why he said this. He goes, yeah, that's not really gonna. I mean, they're different. That's not really gonna help you. And I remember, like, even at that moment, I'm like, what? And like, and he did like photography and cinematography. So I was like, I don't know what. Maybe his thought got crossed, because I was like, that's completely wrong. Like they're
not the same thing. That's true.
That's true.
I do think that they're complementary skills.
Well, 1,000% they're complementary. So it's composition. It's still ISO. It's still like, well, it comes to aperture. Like aperture, maybe not so ISO and shutter or whatever, but aperture and composition. And they're, so I don't know why I ever thought that, but I remember that stuck. I was like, it's a weird thing to say. Like, and I mean, in film, it's called director of photography. You know, like, you know, it's cinematographer, director of photography, the DP.
You know, it really helps you understand light, too.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, I think understanding light is such a big part of any sort of camera work. And certainly if you're a director of photography, any kind of cinematographer, you're almost like your primary responsibility is knowing how to manipulate light or the absence of.
Exactly. Yep.
Like that's a huge part of the job.
Yeah.
And then I think photography helps with that.
100%. And we call it, and the thing too is if you're, you know, it's like understanding the manipulation of light, lack thereof, or painting. We call it painting with light. You know, that's your canvas. It's like, okay, what are we going to do? Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And yeah, knowing your equipment and knowing everything else. And that's why I love photography, because when I go on like trips, it's like, you know, we just did Scotland for 2 weeks, you know, and it's like, oh my God. And you just, you know, I'm sure you did some photos in Costa Rica. It's like really getting to, one, get the angles that are great, but just creating like, it's nice, kind of like you, it's a little therapeutic for me because I don't have to do video, but it's video like. So I can do a master shot without having to be like, oh, I got to film this and how's it going to look in the video.
You don't have to worry about audio.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can just more focus on the visual aspects.
Yeah. Can manipulate it so much more and just like one photo frame. So sometimes I envy photographers. I know it's a hard business in itself too, you know, but it's like people were like, you ever want to get into wedding videography? I was like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, no, one, I don't have the personality, but two, it's like, well, they're like, photographers make a lot of money. I was like, well, yeah, because they can also take 4,000 photos in like 3 hours. I was like, they can also, I have buddies they make great money and like some of the top, if not the top wedding photographers in Minnesota. And nothing against by any means, but like, you know, he's like, can slim up a bride. You can get rid of you know, you can like do things you got one shot with video. And if that thing's off, you're fucked. And
I will say though that, you know, if you're looking at a way to break in with your camera, weddings is a great way to make a little bit of money while you are trying to do the thing that you're really trying to do. I've photographed weddings. I've done some light video on wedding, mostly photographs.
Same.
And it's a great way to learn your camera. You know, don't tell the bride that you're learning your camera, or don't screw up somebody's like monumental. Like, know your camera a little bit, but it's you got to get the reps. You really get the reps in when you're doing a wedding. You know?
Well, I tell people though, is because my wife, because I'm like all her friends know, and like obviously fam, they're like, can you do the photography for us? And I'm like, no. Or I'll do it for free. Yeah. So the expectation is low. Like I mean, it's so low, and they always like oh, it looks good, you know, or whatever. But typically, I'll be like, no, hire somebody, and then I'll come with maybe my own and take a few candids or something. Yeah. But like, do not. I'm there to enjoy myself. I don't want to be like, oh, now I'm great. Now I'm holding your memories.
Job. It is. It's not. You can't be a guest and a wedding photographer at the same time. Yeah. It is a job there. Yep. And the thing that a lot of people don't get about when you do a wedding, it's you will get good shots at a wedding. The thing is, did you get the right shots? There's like a checklist you need to follow when you're like, you need to make sure you get that first kiss. You need to make sure you get that first look. You need to, there's a whole checklist of the different combinations of families, you know, wife and bride just together, wife, bride, and parents, wife, bride, parents, brothers, sisters, bride, wife, bride, groomsmen, wife, bride, bridesmaid, wife, bride, groomsmen, and bride. Like, dude, like that's just a couple of them. Yep. I could keep going. Like, all of the different, and you have to check every one of those, because if you get to the end and you didn't get one of those, all your photos might look great, but if you're missing a shot, it's going to upset them. Because they're like, oh, this was my one day, there's no reshoots on this. Like, it's not like engagement pictures where you could just like, okay, let's go redo it. The wedding is the wedding. Like, you can't screw that up, you know?
Oh, 100%. And like I said, repping and like doing that, I think it does help. But again, though, it's like, you approach with caution. Don't be like, oh yeah, let me do everything, and then you're like screwing it up constantly.
It's a good way to get the reps in if you're already a very competent photographer and everything. I would caution somebody on like, hey, if you're just figuring out your camera, don't go ruin somebody's wedding. Don't do that.
Yeah, no, actually, it was funny, and now it's I think it's a bigger thing now, but senior pictures, you know, like I think. Senior pictures in general.
One of the things I did to learn learning photography for the first time. I went and shot my youngest sister's senior pictures.
Oh, really? Okay.
One of the first, before I went to Standing Rock, any of that, one of the first things that I did. She needed senior pictures. I was like, hey, can I go take them? Retrospect, not that great.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, the thing was, I got the composition right, and the lighting was all good. I went a little bit heavy with like the airbrushing and editing. Like I was too heavy-handed with the edit. There's too much thing is too much editing.
Yeah.
And I went too heavy-handed with the edit, like doing the skin smoother thing, you know, and stuff. To where now I look, I'm like, gosh, she looks like fake, you know.
Did she love it though? Was she like?
Yeah, I think they were all really happy with them. Just me now, I have a professional eye for it now. I'm like, oh, Marty. But like I learned. That's how I learned, and that was on a Canon. Actually, I learned on a Canon. Like T3i or something that.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a 5D. It was like a Canon T3i. That's what I learned on. And then I moved up to a Sony.
Yeah, and that I remember it's funny too because we had this was back in like 04. One of my friends, you know, you tell one of her friends or somebody was like, "Oh, I'll take photos." I think it might have been like a point and shoot. You know what I mean? Like, "Oh, we'll do senior photos or whatever with this," and then you get it and you're like, "Oh man." You know, like clearly
this bad boy's got 8 megapixels.
Yeah,
watch out.
No lighting whatsoever. You know, like, and you're like, someone was starting out there with like it looked like a point and shoot. But no, I know it's like, oh, okay, you know, and then you see the, you know, obviously I think the dirty little secret, if you know enough, is always I tell people like, how do you get like a really good shot? I was like, honestly, worst case scenario, if you want to make sure it looks good, go get yourself a 35 like 1.4, just rent it, because every shot you take, people are gonna be like, oh. So good. Look at that depth of field. It's always that depth of field, you know. Or
as long as you have autofocus.
Exactly.
If you don't know what you're doing,
you're
gonna fuck up the focus on a 1.4 shot.
Oh, 100%.
Depth of field is so shallow.
Yep.
If you don't know what you're doing and you want that, like that is a good cheat code there. Just make sure you got autofocus turned on.
Because I did that.
You will fuck it up if you don't know what you're doing on a depth of field that shallow.
Yeah. When I knew nothing about photography, I knew composition, I knew point and shoots, but when I bought my first Nikon, I was a contractor. No idea how to work it. Like I was just like, I bought like a 50 millimeter, like 1.8. I was like, well, this might be a good. I have no idea. I had the 18 to 300, and I was like, this is the best lens ever. It's an 18 to 3. It's like the worst kit. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's like, oh, I can zoom in and do all this, you know. But I had like a prime 50 millimeter, and I had no idea. I didn't even know what the auto was. I was like, and once in a while, I'd somehow take a good photo. I'm like, this thing's amazing, you know. But yeah, it's like a little cheat code if you ever slap a 35 or 50 1.4 on an autofocus, and it's like, all right. You can fix the rest in post, you know, if you don't want to fuck it up too bad. But no, I know. And again, I agree with you, knowing your kit, like knowing before you go out and, you know, and doing someone's wedding, like just get a few reps in.
Yeah. It's a good way to get reps in once you've done some, you know, start with lower stakes. So just start with doing still life stuff and go around, take, you know, learn the camera, and then you can move up. Again, there's a progression with all of this stuff. I don't think I knew that I was in a progression when I was doing it, but in retrospect, it's like, oh yeah, I kind of moved through this in a sensical way, you know? So yeah, I didn't realize it at the time, but yeah, looking back on it, I think what I did is not a terrible blueprint for how to get into journalism or a creative field or anything. And then along the way, I was also learning marketing. You know, the thing that I did when I first got out is I started my own business. I was like selling the Vet Bro t-shirts and all that sort of stuff, like running a Shopify store, doing direct to consumer, you know, marketing and all of that, and running a business, and kind of learned a bunch of that stuff. And then at Black Rifle, my role shifted more and more into marketing. And I just actually left a role there. I was the VP of social media and strategy. And a big part of that was, hey, you have to understand the direct-to-consumer business. You also have to understand marketing to a food, drug, and mass business. And so everything from social media content and content production to the publishing side of it, to also influencers, influencer marketing, all of that, as well as social shopping, which is a whole other thing from just social media content. It's an entirely other thing. So I, you know, have morphed into this person that, like, yeah, I understand a story, and that complements my skill set in marketing, and my skill set in marketing complements what I'm able to do as a storyteller, because I understand what businesses are looking for and how things can be sold and things like that. So it's pretty interesting path I've taken. Yeah,
I was gonna say we can kind of get into that too. I mean, like we talked about the technical and the creative, but I'm with you too. It's like I've learned more marketing because of my own show. Like, how do I knew the back end of things, but until you do them, you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, yeah, I know we can do certain things with YouTube videos. I know you can do certain things with, like, you know, how do you boost out to that market? Because that's a whole nother field. It's not even like social media is a whole other field. Back end social media now, marketing in traditional sense, marketing on socials, marketing through YouTube, you know, like all that stuff is like it used to be like, I shouldn't say used to be like, like I don't say simplified, but probably, more siloed. And now it's like every single thing could be has its own back end marketing. TikTok has its own back end marketing, Instagram, YouTube. So that's like, you can hire people that literally specialize just in each one of those. Oh, by the way, we're running a giant company. That's its own marketing, that's its own. And then you kind of get into traditional stuff where you're like, oh, we got to direct to consumer, or we got to do this, or where do we put a banner up? Like it's like, like so much more now. And as independent creators per se, like you almost have to learn it to survive it, or not survive, but like to help excel. Like if I wasn't doing my own back end marketing, like putting effort, I put all the effort into making the product. I always tell clients this, I make it for this certain price, but if you don't market it, what's the point?
What I would say is, I don't think people
point,
necessarily need to become an expert in marketing per se, or a specific type of marketing, but what they do need to understand is the business of content, the business of what they're getting into, the business of filmmaking, the business of journalism. If you are just a creative and you are don't understand how a bill becomes a law, you just use that phrase. In the world of content and media, then you're going to be at a severe disadvantage, especially when it comes to like things like going out and getting a budget for the project that you want to go do. You need to be able to explain things like how that person that's going to put up that money, that person or that company is going to get a return on their investment. If you don't understand ROI, if you don't understand CPM, if you don't understand some of these things about just the business of content, if you don't understand budgeting, right? Like, that's a big part of it. Like, it would behoove anybody that is trying to go into this to understand and learn the business side of what they're doing. It's not just you as an artist. Again, there's exceptions. Most of the time, it will greatly benefit you to understand the business side of whatever creative endeavor you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I've, in the last like probably year or so, that I've learned a lot more and more and more. Is the marketing side. Because even if you own your own business, you're still kind of marketing yourself, but also understanding what the client's needs are. Because I've run into that a few times. We're like, oh, you made this great video. It didn't do so well. It's like, well, yeah, because you don't have a YouTube channel. That's not my job. My job isn't to maintain and market your YouTube channel or maintain or market your product. I made you a commercial now, or I made you this piece of content. That's
and understanding the difference between a commercial and content that's made for an organic audience. Those are two different things.
Exactly. Yep.
Commercial is selling something. Organic thing is more of a branding play. A lot of companies don't understand the difference between those.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like they don't know. So it's like, it's like, and for me, it's like I've gotten more into it just because of my own podcast, where I'm like, hey, I'm putting money behind my own marketing, have to run my own accounts, stuff like that. So you start to learn more, holistically or whatever, I would say. Not super deep dive like you've gone into. I know you've been in like the C-suite actually, which is way more complicated and a lot more moving parts. But, when you do work with some clients, like especially if they're smaller, mid-size, they're wanting to do more, but you're like, well, it's just like, you got to put the effort and the time, and we got to have a strategy if you really truly want to make it this way. Cause they see other companies, they're like, oh, let's just do what they did. It's like, well, yeah, okay, sounds good. Well, and I've done that before. It's like, here's videos posting every week. This is what each one will cost. Here's ideas for each one. We'll sub them out into series so that we're not killing ourselves trying to come up with content. We'll do like categories. So podcasting is always a good one. Everyone's got a podcast now. Cool. Well, let's do that. And then you show them a bill, which is not that big of a bill. In fact, it's pretty small because you've run the numbers. Like we can do this. They're just like, whoa. It's like, well, how do you think? Wait, you gonna do it? Like, are you gonna, like you want to become this, and it's like they don't understand that aspect of it. It's like, well, it still comes down to money. If you're, if you're not organically going to do, or not say organically, but if you are going to do it in house, like then you better do it yourself, and that's going to be cheaper. But you're not going to, because you're the CMO. When are you going to start vlogging for whatever small company that you work for? So it's kind of like, I think more companies are starting to come on board with it. They're starting to figure that out. But
any CMO worth their salt understands that things
cost money. Exactly.
Good content costs money.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think it's or if it let's say it costs money, but it can be, it costs money, but it doesn't cost as much money as you think if you do it correctly. If you do it proficiently, you can do some damage.
There's always ways to manage a budget, but you need to have a budget.
Exactly.
Nothing
you still need
free,
a budget. Nothing's free. I think that some people
nothing good is free.
Yeah. It's always like when the YouTube stuff, they're like, oh, somebody's doing it in their basement. Yeah, but they've been at it for fucking 7 years before they got to where they're at with their sponsors. And now they're making a bunch of money. And then now they're charging you to advertise the product. They're like, well, it's just one guy in front of a camera. It's like, well, yeah, because he's been at it for so long. Like, you're going to do that? You're going to sit in front of the camera every day for the next 5 years now to build your brand? No, you're not. So, you know, so sometimes when they approach people like me, they're like, well, let's do that. And it's like, okay, well, you got the time and the money, you know, like it might not be a lot of money, but it's going to be a lot of time. You know?
Chris Cappy's a great example of that. You know, he started a YouTube channel for Task and Purpose way back in the day, and he grinded for years.
Yeah. I listened to his video. It's like 20.
He was getting millions of views right off the bat. No, he grinded through the days of just hundreds of views, and then thousands of views, then tens of thousands, and it took years. And he was a one-man show. He had to shoot and edit and research and write and everything himself. Like, he grinded for years to get to the point where he's at now, where he posts a video, and more often than not, it's doing 1 million+ views per video. Great place to be. Didn't happen overnight. He had to work his tail off for years to make that happen. And any company that's like, well, we should just go do that. Well, okay, yeah. You got 3 to 5 to 7 years, and the right person to be on camera, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they think too is like you think of the technicals behind that. It's like those maps. You know, they don't think like, oh, let's do a map like that. It's like, do you understand how much time that takes to make a map like that? You know, or you're like, I was thinking.
Yeah, he's got a team now.
Yeah, he's got a team now. Yeah,
back when he started.
Yeah, it was like him on a green screen or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And like I remember, and I watched his video. He's like, oh, he's leaving. Like I don't know. I know of him because sometimes I'd see his. I didn't really watched him, but I knew of him in the task and purpose space. But yeah, it's like, you know, you're doing stuff like that. And you know, even like with Preston Stewart, like we're talking about him too. It's like he's closing in on 1 million subs, but it's him. Like I trying to get him on this podcast. He's like, we got to schedule like 3 months out because he works twice a day. He posts twice a day. Now it's not like 1 million per video, but he's getting enough to where every single video is doing well into 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000s. Well, you add that up twice a day, every day for 5 days in a row, 4 weeks in a row, every month. You know what I mean? Like,
respect the hustle so much because I know what that looks like.
Oh, I know.
Like,
same. Yeah. Same.
The work ethic that takes, man.
Yeah.
Like, hats off to him.
And he dedicates it, you know, and he got, you told me the story, like I said, trying to get on, but like trying to schedule him, because I take him away for a day. Dude, that's 2 videos. That could be like, who knows what, that could be a few $1,000s out of his pocket just for one day, you know. And so he's, you know, very much like, okay, yeah, let's try to plan a day where he can, and because he's like, I might be able to do some other stuff too in the Midwest. So he wants to make sure it's a trip that it's worth
get a few things out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, man, no worries. But yeah, you start doing that. I think when people look at the media space and YouTube, like even now, like we were talking about, you know, you're starting your show and I have mine. It's like, yeah, it's a lot of bandwidth and you're doing it at night, you know, especially if you have a full-time job, like, and you have that standard too in your head. Like you're not, I hate to say this, but you're not it's easily, I shouldn't say, I don't know how to say it. It's easily a little more forgivable if you're starting out in your like early 20s with a podcast and it looks like shit. It's a little bit different when you're 15 years in, you know what you're doing, to have it look like shit, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like because I'm a cinematographer, I can't show up like my set here. It's not even my set. This is my workspace, but I made it. This is my studio. You know, I knew from minute one, like I can't have this look like shit. We were talking, I'm not doing voice because, or video calls because
there's no way for it to look good.
Yeah, there's no way for it to look good. Even if even my Amanda's like, well, why don't you send out I was like, I could send out a mic in a video package, but then it's like, now I'm risking that. It's dicey. And it's like, you know, it's like just fly people in and then, but do the bandwidth you can do, but make it quality. You know, and like I feel like, you know, I'm sure we were talking. It's like, yeah, I know you don't want to make it look like shit. So even though if you don't do a big lighting pack, you want to make sure at least you can control how. I know that about you. So it's like, you know, we have like a standard to be like, well, we have to like be at this standard, even at the starting point, quote unquote, because you don't want to be like, hey, here I am, and we're just like, whatever.
Hey, back when I made that first YouTube video back in 2013, did 1 million views. Terrible at editing, no lighting. It was just a Canon sitting on a tripod. Yeah, I mean, it was funny, and that's why it did well. Yeah, it was not good. Yeah. In any other way than we had some good jokes in there. Like, wow. Yeah. You know, it's like, I'm not going back to the hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we're not regressing that far.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's why, you know, it's like, putting that effort forward and you know, grinding it out, but also being like, yeah, we're going to put some quality into this, you know, and time and effort and stuff like that. And to separate yourself, because, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah. Get a started podcast. It's a great way to go out. Everyone has a podcast now. So you're like, now it's back to the grind. Now it's, it's competitive. Now it's back to the grind. Luckily, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, next to Google, which is the largest. So
YouTube is Google.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. YouTube is Google, but it's the second largest search platform in the world. So there's hope. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll always find a niche. Like, even, you know, it's always finding those, getting those next goals.
Regardless of the competition, the great stuff always rises to the top.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is the fact. That is a fact. Like, it doesn't matter how much competition there is. If you are as good as you think you are, your stuff will get seen.
Yep.
Or you're not as good as you think you are.
Exactly.
And that might have to have an honest one-on-one with yourself, you in the mirror.
Yep. Or you just get Marty Skovlund Jr. to come onto your podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure I will be the one that makes this a raving success.
This is it, boys. We're gonna explode after this.
Yeah. No, this is no. You've got a good show going here. This is something that, like, I'm confident. Like I said, at the time that we're recording this, you're at like 20,000 subscribers. I'm confident that this is just gonna keep growing, keep going. The whole thing is just like, you just can't stop.
Yeah,
right?
I appreciate it. No, and I think that momentum, because it's there. I'm like, I can't. You know, like it's gotta find a way to keep going, or, you know, like, even if one episode, like, I think, you know, you get in your head where you're like, oh, that episode didn't do so hot. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Then go on to the next one. You know, like the last one, great guys, fun. We had cigars, didn't break 100 yet.
Yeah.
You know, the one before that broke 5,000 organically. You know, Joe's broke 77,000 and one went viral. It's close to 250,000 views, you know, like on one of the clips. It's the nature of the beast, you know. Some hit, some don't. Just keep moving forward. Have fun guests on. You know, there's a bit of a niche, but you know, I'm eventually want to expand more and more. But it's like, just start with what you can do now, but focus on quality, because then that quantity will start coming in, or that repeat. You know, like, don't kill yourself.
It'll build over time.
It'll build over
really
time.
Will,
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And if you've been doing, you know, in this world long enough, you know, it just takes time. You know, Jack Mandeville's, he's in a similar place right now. He started his show around the same time that you did yours.
He's doing really well.
Yeah, it was the last time I looked, he was at around 20,000 views as well. The last time I looked. But like, similar deal. And, you know, me and him talk all the time. He's like, yep, just going to keep doing it. It's just a matter of time. At some point you reach that tipping point and things just really start to fall into place. But you have to, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to.
I think that's what we're getting at that. I think companies or other people want it to happen overnight. And you're like, that's not what it
I want overnight too.
Yeah, me too. I want overnight.
I understand that is not. That is not what happens.
You can make things move faster. There's a way to do that, but that's a relative term.
Well, if you work your tail off, it'll go faster than if you didn't work your tail off.
Yeah, you can't just stop and go back and stop and go back and be like, oh, it'll come eventually. You know, like, because I think that happens with people too, is they get burned out. But it's also, you're kind of like, well, you got to put more effort in. You know what I'm saying? Is like, it's kind of, sometimes you look at things, you're like, yeah, I can see why you got burned out. Like, you didn't, I hate to say it, like, not self-improvement thing, but you're kind of like, you got to put more effort into it. It's like, nah, it's like, well, then that's probably why it's not going to work out. You know, like, you got to have a passion for it. Especially, like, for me, we're much older now. We're not in our 20s. We're not in the early 20s. If I'm committed to this project, I got 2 kids and I'm putting money into it, as my wife already has told me, is like, is this gonna make us she's like, are we seeing an ROI on this yet? She goes, I know it's not gonna be an ROI soon, but I was like, are we, you know, like, are we going in the hole?
That's where you set those benchmarks up of like, am I hitting the benchmarks
exactly,
that I should be hitting at this time? But yeah, that's one thing, like, man, I used to go and write for 36 hours straight. I'd stay up all night and just crush, and I can't do that anymore. It's not like I can do it. I understand it's not good for me. You know, fucking up your circadian rhythm, not being worthless for the next day after that. Like, it's better to be a little bit more, you know, I think a professional knows how to work, not constantly in these sprints, but just waking up and doing the work every day. And it will compound over time.
Exactly.
Instead of doing these like sprints. I used to just go on these sprints that were insane, and then I'd be destroyed for a certain amount of time afterward. And then sprint again. It's just super unsustainable way to go. And then this is, again, 10 plus years ago, before I knew anything about anything. But now I'm at a place where it's like, nope, I need to get sleep. I need to be rested. I need to eat right. I need to work out. I need to go for a walk when I'm stuck. Like I've picked up these like things that I know how to like break the ice on creativity blocks or writer's block or anything like that. I understand why if things aren't going the way I want them to go, I usually know what the problem is. You know, like, well, Marty, yeah, of course you're just sitting here staring at your computer screen because you slept for like 4 hours last night, you know, because your toddler was up all night, you know, whatever. You were cleaning up puke at 3 a.m. Like, that's life, and you have to deal with that. And then you have to be realistic with yourself of like, yeah, am I going to be at my peak performance the next day as a 40-year-old? Like, probably not. You know, you still need to sit down and put the time in. You still have to show up, even if you don't feel great. But you need to understand that, like, just because you're showing up doesn't mean you're going to get the most out of it every single time. Keep the habit of showing up every day. It's like just like the gym, right? You got to show up every day, even if you don't feel great. Maybe you won't get as much out of it as you normally do. That's fine.
Just show up.
Creative is the same way. You got to show up. You got to put the time in. I tell this to like writers all the time. If you are waiting to be inspired to write, that is the realm of amateurs. Professional writers sit down and they write, regardless of whether it's good or not. That's what editing is for. Sit down and do your job. Like, that's what it is. And I think that's the thing that usually when you're first coming into it, you don't really realize that. I didn't when I first started. Inspiration would hit, the idea would hit, and that's not how real life works. That's not how a professional works. You know,
that's, I think, video, cinematography, filmmaking, or even just when you're going to, like when I was starting out, it's like you just got to go out and film it. You know, whether it's good or not, just get the shot. Because you're going to put it on the reel, and the reel is going to sell you. You know, in the early years, now it's, you know, network, word of mouth. People still look at the reel and they're like, oh yeah, like, let's do that.
Well, if you're first starting out, people want to see a reel. If your reputation doesn't precede you yet, then you have to have something to show. And there's some of those bangers too. I mean, like, guys, you know, a big popular thing back in the day was going to Iceland. You know, back in like 2015, 16, because Minnesota, we have a straight shot. So a lot of like guys would go and take off and go do that or whatever, and go and film in Iceland, or, you know, if you know, some cheat codes here and there. If you have the money, if you can scrounge it, you know, some cheat codes for young cinematographers out there. Get into an exotic place and just start filming in slow-mo, low angles. It'll help build something out that, because someone's going to see something that they don't see every day. You go to Thailand or you go to Iceland, you know, that was, again, Iceland is a big popular one. But yeah, just like, you don't have to be inspired. Just get out there and go film. Even in, like, I'd go film skateboarders in Minneapolis because that's cool. It's good in slow motion. I get all the buildings. You kind of start figuring out composition, you know, the lighting. It's just skateboarders. Your job is to make it look good. You know what I mean? Like, my job is to make something look awesome. Sometimes at the end of the day, it's just what it is. Like, you know, I'm hiring you to make it look really good. It's a mundane task. How do you make a mundane task look like, you know, a Tony Scott film? You know, that's my job. You know, make it look like Michael Bay. All right, cool. I saw something pop up on Instagram yesterday where some creator on there made like a highlight reel of their friends just golfing. And really well edited, really well shot, all that sort of stuff. And it was just, you know, obviously them just screwing around. But I was like, this is exactly how you show what you can do. You just go out there, make a highlight reel of your friends doing whatever they're doing. It could be your friends playing it doesn't even have to be an action thing like skateboarding. It could be golf. It could be bowling. It could be playing cards. It could be them at work. You know, I mean, you and I both know how cinematic is making coffee. You know, like, go make a highlight reel of somebody, make it look exciting, put some music to it, and then you can teach yourself how to edit. Making a highlight reel, you learn pacing, you learn shot selection, all this other stuff, and you do that, and it's like, man, you do that, that's going to get a lot of potential, especially if you're a freelancer, a lot of potential clients very excited about your work is if they see a highlight reel like they're like, oh shit, if you did that over that very boring thing, I can't wait to see what you do with, you know, what I have going on.
Dude, we're gonna jump into something. We'll talk about this, but I've been wanting to talk about the few guys that have come on. I mean, sometimes we always gloss over, or we talk about some other stuff, but some of the, I love talking with you about stuff, but family, balancing family, either military or what we do. Every time I talk with like Mike Bray, like I was like, oh man, like dude, you're gone a lot. You don't, like, how do you balance family? Something that we don't talk about as much, but I was like, I got to talk about Marty because we're kind of in that same boat. So how do you balance family? And when you were in your military career, now, you've done a lot of stuff. You travel a lot. You got 2 kids. You got a wife. You're still married. So good on you. Like most people we know, they either get divorced or they never get married. So they're like, well, I do all this stuff. It's like, yeah, man, like,
I think 2 things can be true. You cannot have a lot of balance, and you can have a successful marriage. I think those things can be true if you marry the right person. I married the right person. Lauren and I, we met right after my first deployment, and so we were together through my next 4 deployments. So the foundation of our relationship was me leaving for long periods of time. And we were good through that. Complete trust, great relationship, all this. Of course, it sucks to be away from your loved one. Of course. But we were good at it. And so when I got, left the military and, increasingly over the years had to travel and stuff, we were almost coming from this perspective of like, oh, you're going to be gone for a week. That sucks. At least it's not 3 months, 4 months, like it was when I was in 1st Ranger Battalion. And, at times it is very out of balance. At times we've had to have conversations of like, hey, Marty, is there like, especially once we started having kids, right? Because kids change. Fortunately, I did not have kids while I was in the military. That came almost immediately after my first daughter was born, within a year of me leaving the military. But, with kids, with all this travel and stuff that I've done, and still in many cases to very dangerous places, there's been times where Lauren has been like, hey, it's been a lot lately. Is there a way we can like rein it in a little bit? Like, yeah, absolutely. I'm also exhausted. Usually if she's feeling exhausted, I'm also exhausted, And so then you kind of work to try to find ways to like maybe be a little bit more picky about what you're going out on in the future. And then there's other times where you're just grinding because the opportunity is there and you got to push. It's hard. We say to push hard. Sometimes it's hard to push hard when you have no opportunity to push hard. And sometimes when the opportunities are coming, you just got to push hard. And that's where you need to know that your significant other, your husband or your wife is on the same page of you as like when you're like, hey, this is going to be this period, this thing coming up, these next 2 months or whatever are packed. Like it's going to be a rough go. Okay. Yep. Let's fucking do it. You got to have that right partner. And, when it comes to finding the right person, I don't have any advice. I picked a good one, she picked a good one, we found each other. Right. And that worked. And so that foundation there is so important because if you do go into this line of work, it's not going to be in balance all the time. If you're searching for work-life balance, in any of the things that I've done as a journalist, a conflict reporter, a small business owner, a marketing executive, any of these different hats that I've worn over the years, they are rife with imbalance as far as work-life balance is concerned. They are. It is the nature of the beast. And this is the nature of the beast for anybody that is a high performer. Anybody that is a high performer in any field, they are not going to be in balance. So if you're looking for balance and to be a high performer, I do think that in 99.9% of situations, those 2 things are mutually exclusive. I don't think you can be a high performer. I don't think you can be in the top 1% of your field and have work-life balance. I don't think it's possible. If you're an athlete, you're showing up early, you're staying late. If you're, in any field that you do, you have to grind and be okay with that. All that being said, that's my preamble. The next thing after that is you still have to find ways to prioritize family and keep your marriage and your family together. You have to find ways. It may not be a balanced approach, as I said, but you have to then, part of the grind is putting in the effort into your relationship. Part of the grind, hanging out with your kids. You might be exhausted because you just spent 12, 13, 14 hours in an edit or doing, a work day or whatever. Now you need to go sit down at dinner with your family or go put the kids to bed or wake up in the middle of the night. Like, guess what? It's both ends of it. Like that. Sorry. You signed up for it. If you want work-life balance, go get a 9 to 5 and be mediocre. I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is what it is. And I think anybody who has made it very far in any career field would endorse that message. It's not a great message. I mean, I'm sorry. It's not so inspiring. Be like, yeah, man, sorry. It's probably going to suck for a while, and I hope your relationship can weather it. Because if it can't, yeah, it's probably going to lead to divorce. Either you're going to have to quit the path that you're on or what you're passionate about, or you're going to get divorced if you didn't find that right person that is aligned with you on and down to go through the grind with you. Because guess what? For my wife, it is a grind for her too. When I'm out of town, it's a grind. Taking care of a couple of kids. She works. She does, takes care of the house, all this other stuff. It's a grind. You need to find somebody that's down for the grind with you. Yeah, I don't know. It's that is the balance. And like I said, I try to do things like, that was why it was really important. I just got back from a family vacation. We went down for, better part of 2 weeks to Costa Rica. It was great. And I didn't bring a laptop with me or anything like that. I try to find ways to kind of make it all worth it,
No, I agree with you. I think what you said is right. Like, because you want to be that high performer. It's going to be, you're not going to have a 9 to 5. You're not going to have, like we were talking before. It's like, yeah, we have technical 9 to 5s of W-2s, but that's not a typical 9 to 5.
Even when I was writing my book, my 9 to 5 was more like a 7 to 8.
Exactly.
And then from 8 to 12 or 8 till 2 in the morning, I'm working on a book and then waking up and doing it over again. Like, a W-2 job isn't, again, especially if you're trying to be a high performer in every aspect of your life, which I am. I'm not trying to, the phrase that haunts me, Ethan, absolutely fucking haunts me, is, how you do anything is how you do everything. You mail it in on one thing, you'll mail it in on anything.
Yep.
And that fucking haunts me every time I want to cut a corner on something, or just like, oh God, I don't want to take the garbage out right now. How you do anything is how you do everything. If you're going to mail it in or half-ass it or whatever on this small little thing, you'll do it on the big things. What's the phrase in the military? You don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the lowest level of training, like it's a similar sentiment, right? Like it just, that's the thing that, like I said, it's impossible for me to just mail it in on any one aspect. I want to be the perfect husband. I want to be the perfect father. I want to be the perfect employee if I am employed somewhere. I want to be one of the greatest storytellers that has ever lived. That's like an aspiration. I want to be spoken about in the same breath as Hemingway and Steinbeck and, Sebastian Younger, Anthony Bourdain, these people, Ernie Pyle, these people that I look up to. I want to be mentioned in the same breath as them. Guess what? That requires dedication and doing everything at a high level and probably an imbalance in your work-life balance. Yeah. Right? Famously, I think most of those people, particularly Hemingway, went through a couple of different relationships. Had a drinking problem, whatever. It's hard. It's really hard. So
I think I'm with you on that, on the coordination aspect, because that's what I do with my wife. It's like, hey, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks in Ukraine. We're planning this out. This is the way we're going to handle it. Financially, but also like, getting prepped for that kind of stuff. Also, and I think so. I've done that stuff too. Like, hey, August is gonna suck. Like, I'm gonna be gone for a week or so. Like, this time period's gonna, suck. But I need to go do this to do this. And if the coordination is there, that's what's helped us in our marriage. Because communication's huge. Yep. Coordination and communication. Because it's like, even if I'm gone, as long as it's planned, it was like the rando trips that would come up, and like in the Black Rifle days was like call on a Friday, leave on a Monday for no reason. There's no good reason for it. Those were the tough ones because then it's like we have to pivot last second and there's no reason to, and then it would show up and there's no production going on for a week, but you just be there. Like, and those were the things that like add up. But as long as they're coordinated well in advance, typically that's how we kind of work around things. And communication's huge. She's, as long as you're hearing her out, or you're there with the kids taking care. Like I take care of the kids during the week if she's got to go in, and but when I'm gone. So she's got to take care of the house. And yeah, I agree with you. If you wanted to excel, that's you're going to have to communicate a lot.
Yeah, we set
coordinate
up a family
lot.
Google calendar that's a shared calendar. And so any appointments or trips or things like that, they all go on that, so we both have visibility.
Yeah.
And that's helped a lot, honestly. It's not perfect. There's been times where I forgot to put something on the calendar or whatever, or something was put on there, but it changed and we didn't go make the change on the calendar. So miscommunications will still happen from time to time, but starting that calendar for us was huge on the communication aspect, because, I can put something on the right there from my phone. And I don't know why I did 2 thumbs like I'm on a BlackBerry and it's 2009. Nobody does that on an iPhone. It's 1 thumb,
Oh, I just still do. I do too.
Do you do 2 thumbs?
Yeah.
Well, you're kind of weird. So.
Well, I type fast. I did it. Yeah.
No, I'm a 1 thumb guy.
You're the way you're driving,
yeah.
typing it. Yeah.
I don't drive in tech. No, it's that's helped us a lot though with that, because communication is so important, and just maintaining a joint calendar can go a lot toward maintaining that good communication.
Yeah.
So that's one of the more specific tactics that we use.
Because I think something that we run into in our community, which I know we have friends. We both have friends that are divorced 3 times or whatever, or other marriages fail later on, but it's always that communication aspect. Like I remember and there's not, and they're good dudes. I think it's just especially when you're in the military, that's the end all. Like military doesn't care about your marriage. It's like, and some guys it's very much like, well, she can take it or leave it. I was like, well, yeah, she's got the 2 kids though, man.
She very well may leave it.
Yeah, and then typically they do. And I think that's something that when the mission is so great, I think guys get skewed up a bit where they're like, well, she should care. It's like, no, not really. Like that's not her mission. That's not, if you're deploying.
And the hard part in the military is the more effort you put in, you're still getting paid the same.
Yeah, exactly.
On the civilian side, you can kind of reason, hey, the harder I push, the more money we'll make, the better our life will be, the better house we can live in, all that sort of stuff.
Exactly,
The better the life we can create for our children.
Yeah.
All that. In the military, it's kind of like not really the case.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it's definitely something that people have to be prepared for and be prepared to, really push hard for a long time. And, hopefully you get to a place in your career where you can make the choice about how and when you push hard. And, hopefully you get to a place where you're financially independent and can just really focus on the things that you love, and you can get some balance. It's possible to get to that place. It's probably not in the beginning, though. A lot of times it's not in the middle part either.
Yeah.
Some people never get to that destination. Some people just have to grind their entire life, you know, and that's a possibility.
No, I agree.
Hopefully you love the work.
Yeah. Well, they're saying it's like, even like I said, the communication, the coordination, I remember being younger and being like, I'm going to stay single or not get married. And I was fortunate enough to live those first 10 years to where I was like, hey, every girlfriend I had, I was like, you take it or leave it. Like, I'm going to deploy in contract, or I'm going to do this.
That's how I decided to marry my wife.
Yeah.
That training cycle that I was in where we met, when it was kind of getting closer to the first deployment that we would do together, but my second deployment, I kind of had that talk with her, because I didn't talk. She knew I was in the Army, but didn't talk about it a ton. I was like, hey, so here's the deal. We met after my first deployment. A lot of guys that get 18 months, 24 months in between deployments, if not longer. We go every 6 months. Every 6 months, I'm going to be gone for 4 months. It's just, and the next one's coming up here, and it won't be the last. Like, if you're not down for that, I completely understand. I want to be upfront with you now, and we're sitting in our room talking about this. I want to be upfront with you and tell you this is kind of the deal. This is kind of, if you're not down with that, I completely understand. And let's just call it, we'll be friends. That's great. Love hanging out with you and stuff. But I totally get it if that's not what you're trying to sign up for in a relationship. And without hesitation, she was just like, well, I'd rather have you around some of the time than none of the time. Almost obviously. And I was just like, boom, you just got yourself a ring. It's not coming for another 18 months, but you just got yourself, I am marrying this woman.
Yeah.
That answer alone just blew me away. And that has been a lot of our I think she didn't realize at the time how true those words would be, especially after I got out of the military and I would continue to be gone a lot. But fortunately not for 4 months at a time, but still a lot.
Yeah.
And but there's things too that a lot of people can do. Knowing it's a grind, make it a little bit easier on everybody. Hey, probably shouldn't be drinking every night. Give up the alcohol. Give up some of the vices that you have. That's going to make life a little bit easier at home. If you, do the things that you need to do that might be the hard things to do. If it's going to help with that work-life balance, you can't blame work if your balance is out of whack because you're going out to the bar every night, if you're meeting up with friends all the time and stuff and not spending time at home with your spouse. Like, do the hard things too. It's not just managing work, it's managing every aspect of your life. I think that's a big part of it too.
No, yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, like I said, you spend time with the kids, after school or on the weekends, and like when you're not working, then you're at home. I think things I've heard, which is reigns true, which as well is like, not only you have to be home, you need to be present. Like don't be on your, guys get on their phone or they're posting or doing whatever, or they just like, you have to be present.
Yeah.
Like if
and
you're
I'm not perfect at that.
Yeah.
I oftentimes will need to pull out my phone for something or another. And it is what it is. But again, I try to keep it reasonable.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like being present, like being like emotionally present. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I'm here being a fucking dick. Like, like
sometimes it's not on just the phone. Like for me, and my wife knows, she can tell. Sometimes I'm off in la la land.
Yeah.
I'm not on my phone, but we might be watching a show or hanging out together or something, and my head is not there. And she can kind of tell, like, thinking about work or and I'm like, because there's something going on that's obviously really important, or that just you can't stop thinking about because it has a direct impact on your life. Some of these things, and it's what it is. It's tough. It's really tough. And that's where you circle back to. It's a grind. Even when you're trying to shut down and be present, it's hard sometimes. Give yourself grace, but make the effort to be present for sure. Yeah,
100%. And I agree. I think, because I don't think a lot of guys, I think they're probably hearing it a little bit more and more lately, but because we're getting older and now we have families, and it's like, hey man, like make time for your family or communicate with your wife. Like, just because she won't let you go do something doesn't mean she like hates you or like, you're the end all to everything. It's like, dude, like there's other people.
Yeah,
there's
I don't really subscribe to the whole, like, let your wife lets you do stuff.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't let me do stuff any more than I let her do stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
We're both full fucking grown adults.
Yeah.
And we talk to each other, we communicate and things like that. We run things by each other.
Exactly.
But I don't think either of us feels like the other has like a veto authority.
No.
If I'm going to go do something, I'm going to
Well,
go
really,
do
when
something.
guys are doing that, they're like, yeah, man, don't go to the fucking bar. Like, go.
You'll never hear me say, like, my wife won't let me. There's a choice there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is like those type of things. It's like, yeah, man, you probably because she's mad at you because she wants to stay at home. Like, have time with the kids, spend time with the family. I think we're all getting a bit older now. It's like, I don't want to go out. You know what I mean? But there was a time when you would, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to go out with the boys, or we're going to do this, or we're doing this or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think, it's like you're doing all these things. Like, I'm with you. It's like, hey, I want to be directing films. And we've talked about that too. It's like, if that dam breaks, or when that dam breaks, like I will be gone for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. Like we will be on
it's
set.
Not 3 to 4 months.
Exactly. Or 3 to, exactly. I was talking to my buddy Joey.
Hopefully you're paid well enough to bring the family out.
Exactly. Yeah. He was just out in Thailand for 2 months, filming, doing, because he's a producer. He's like, yeah, okay. Like we'll be out on locations for 2 months at a time, and that's communication. Do you work remote? Do the kids come out? Do we, then we need a nanny. Okay. Like, do I, if we're making decent money, then throw that into a nanny then, for 2 months, and like to make it happen, to make life a little bit easier,
That's the thing. You do start making better money. You can do things to alleviate
offset.
Some of the stress, like
exactly. Yeah.
Hiring somebody to come in and clean every other week or whatever. Take that heavy deep cleaning off the person that's home as much. There's like things that you can do there. You can order out once in a while. Things like that. Like, hey, we don't have to cook tonight.
We do that all the time. Yeah. It's like the order out, or the my wife, she's like, we need to make. I was like, that's fine. Like, go for it. I've never stopped you. So she's like, okay. It's like just once a month comes in, does a deep clean.
Does the deep clean.
And that's it.
Keep things reasonable. I 1,000% think some of those things are worth it, because it helps get you closer back to that balance that you're seeking. Sometimes you just sometimes to make the good money, you have to spend some of that money on things that you just don't have time to do anymore. Like there's things that I know how to fix around my house, but I don't have the time to do it. So I will, bring, our deck on our house is a great example. The deck needed some work. It had, needed a good structural reinforcement. was old at that point. I know how to go in and fix a deck, but it's a kind of a full-time thing to go in there and work on something like that. And so I just had to, pay to bring somebody in that knew what they were doing, was going to do it the right way and do it in a timely manner. Otherwise I'd probably still be sitting there saying, hey kids, don't go out on the deck. It's not safe.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Because that's the situation it was in,
Yeah. Cause I had to build this studio. So it's like I had the time. So, okay, cool. I can work on this and still do other projects. But now it's like, you got to finish the bathroom. It's like, we're going to be hiring somebody here soon.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like we could do it before. I don't have that time anymore, or that balance of like, okay, yeah, now we're the ball's rolling here. We got to use some of that money now to get the bathroom done. But no, I agree. I think the coordination on that and then the communication is huge. And like I said, talking about it, because the first time I met you, the first time you're like, oh, I'm glad there's some guy with a family. We started working at Black Rifle. You're like, oh, yeah, I'm glad there's another guy with a family. Or like another guy that's married.
I was going through with kids and a wife.
Yeah. You're like, oh, good, another married guy. All right, cool. I was like, yeah, my daughter's on the way. Oh, great, the guy with a family. I was like, yeah, man. But I think that is, I agree. We're at the work-life balance, but it's going to be unbalanced, and I agree with you with that. I think when people think about, like when I think of work-life balance, it's going to be unbalanced, but you need to counteract or get that pendulum swinging so that you can make it work, at the end of the day,
I think so.
Like, just kind of like, hey, we balance out, even though it's going to be unbalanced, at least we can balance the family a little bit more on this vacation or at home in those small moments, like with my daughter or something, like be present. She wants to go play in the backyard. Okay, let's go. Like, there's no, let's just hang it up, and not do that. Like, yeah, man, let's go in the backyard for 30 minutes before we go to bed. Swing on,
goes a long way
exactly.
sometimes.
Swing on the swing set. Like nothing's stopping you. It's just whether or not you want to be lazy about it or something like that.
Yeah. How you do anything is how you do everything.
Exactly. Yeah. Because we did that the other night. It's like, all right, put the sun down, and she wanted to go out, and I was like, well, we could just sit here and watch TV. I could tell her no, or throw on the shoes and we go outside for 30 minutes, and before she goes to bed, and as any parent knows, now you got tubby time, and now you got your night routines, and you got your stuff. But no, I agree with you on that, and it's good to hear with people that operate at high levels. We don't talk about it that much, but we've seen the disasters that, kind of some guys' personal lives, and not, it's not like they're a disaster, but sometimes it's like they don't figure it out. They're like, well,
it can affect your literal health.
Yeah.
I've had, doctors tell me that it looks like I'm going into adrenal failure because of the amount of stress I was putting myself through and things like that. And it's tough. I've, more recently gone through and put a lot of effort into understanding exactly where I sit from a health perspective, because part of operating at a high level is understanding and making sure that your body is up to it and that your mind is up to it, So I went through Hunter 7 and got a full body MRI done. I went to my doctor and said I want to run a full panel on my blood, see where my testosterone's at, my vitamin D is at, all these different things. Because some of these things where you're like, gosh, I feel like I could be going harder, or is this just me getting older or whatever? You need to go figure out where all your numbers at. I've started to take a variety of different multivitamins and peptides and things like that. I've monitored my coffee consumption, my water consumption, all of these different things, right? In an effort to, hey, if I want to be at a high level, just like, Tom Brady or LeBron James or any of these guys that play athletic careers well into their 40s, to do that, you have to make sure everything is working and that you are doing that preventative maintenance or just maintenance in general, all of that. And that's where that's something that I definitely didn't do when I was kind of earlier on this career path, that now I'm like, no, you got to lock in and prioritize physical fitness, mental health, spirituality, all of those things. Work-life balance, all of that. Even if that work-life balance is out of balance, you have to understand how and when it is out of balance. You have to monitor everything. You have to track everything. You have to, again, I keep saying it, how you do anything is how you do everything. And if I am neglecting my body or my mind or my spirit, then what else am I neglecting? Because if I will neglect those important things, what else is getting neglected?
No, I agree with you 100%. That's my, we started getting back up at 5:30 in the morning. Not a morning person.
Yeah.
But I've been doing that lately. Actually, it's been the last month again. I was doing it last summer, liked it a lot, stopped, got back into it again. Same thing, man. It's like stop drinking during the week.
You ask yourself the question, like, how bad do you want it?
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you. It's like,
are you willing to do the hard things?
Yeah, and it's all too. It's like, sometimes the hard things are the simple things. Like get a good night's sleep. So I get tracking my sleep now. Like I've been doing that for a few years, but now it's like honing it in. It's like I stopped drinking during the week. If I have a drink, it's like one bourbon on a Friday and maybe a few beers on a Saturday. That's it. And I do it well before I go to sleep, because you feel it the next day, like no matter how you do. And it's like getting up at 5:30, going for a run. Also, like me and Amanda, because I was like, look, I was like, I need to rein in my diet. Not that I'm like overeating, but I'm just not eating the right things. So it's like getting into that. We started doing factor meals. And like, dude, that's changed. I felt so much better.
Dude, factor meals?
Yeah.
Well, one, to finish that thought there real quick, it just goes back to the, like, again, I didn't come up with this, but I'll get you the person that says this so you can tag them in this.
Okay.
But it's not easy, but it is simple. Don't overcomplicate it. It's like some of those things that you're doing. It's not easy, but it is simple.
Yeah.
Factor meals, though, dude, there was like 15 months there where somebody that had a factor meal subscription, they kept getting delivered to our house.
Oh, really?
And every time we would call Factor and they'd just be like, oh, yep, just keep it. That's fine. We'll resend it or whatever. Every month we would get these factor meals. And so I had like a free factor meal subscription for like 15 months. They were great. Like they were fantastic. Spree there of like, oh man, lunch is taken care of. Didn't have to think about lunch. Lunch is always the hardest one for me because it's in the middle of the day when you're busy, things are going on and all that. Actually, I probably need to get back on Factor. If you're listening to this and you want to sponsor me,
I do. Yeah, sponsor the podcast.
Sponsor me, Factor meals.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I love it because it's like for me, it's I keep it simple because it's more about my wife. It was because she'd always want to come home and like make some. So I'd be like. Breakfast and lunch pretty solid. I'd pre-prep lunch, so it'd be like chicken and rice, whatever. Chicken because I don't have much of a palate, so I'm like I can eat chicken, But it's always like she wants to sit down and have like spaghetti or fucking some other wild off the cuff whatever. They're like, all right, cool, whatever. And it kind of got to the point where I was like, one, we're spending too much money on this one meal that you want to make like 2 or 3 times a week, and it was always a pain in the ass. So I was like, let's just do factor meals, so you can choose if you want it to be lunch or dinner. It's my dinner. Because I want to go to bed on a good stomach on whatever, so I sleep better. Because you hate how I eat breakfast and lunch, so let's have like a good meal at dinner or whatever you want to do, And it's worked out great. She loves it. She does it for lunch. I do it for dinner, and it simplifies how we're gonna eat, And it's super healthy, man. Like the first week she was gone in Florida, so our first 2 weeks I ended up eating her meals because she couldn't take them with her because she was traveling. Dude, I was like, it felt like a new man almost because it was like cleaning out. It was like good food. It's like clean food, It's like when I say it's good food, also it's clean food as well. It's just like clean food, and you're like
the right amount of calories for a single meal. It kind of helps. It's one thing that I'll sometimes struggle with as a large dude is portion control. Like, all right, this is exactly how much I need. Just eat this. Don't eat anything else. Just eat this.
It's funny till you get it too. You're like, so this is the proper proportion. You know what I mean? And you're like, yeah, okay. And even with like vegetables, you're like, oh, that's it. I didn't have to eat that many vegetables. You're like, and it has because I get my vegetables in, and it's simple, but it's effective. It's like, cool. Don't drink during the week. All right, now I'm waking up better. I'm sleeping better. Like, and then I can perform better during the day, even it's mentally or even physically. It's just like sometimes I was just like, because I don't have enough time in the day because of this podcast, because I'm now a creative director standing up a whole nother division of entertainment. You're like, okay, like I need to get my mornings back. I need to get my nights are a bit shot because that's my family time. So I'm booked up until this point. Even like this again, work-life balance, the small things. If it's like if I spend an hour with my, because I'll be like, well, I'll go down and edit at put my daughter down. She's going through some night stuff now where like I have to sleep in her bed till she passes out. So it's like, cool. Now if I'm ate up from 7:45 to like 8:30, we don't know when that happens. It's like, okay, well, am I going to go downstairs and get another few hours in, or are you gonna, or for me, sometimes I do. Sometimes it's like I'm just gonna sit here and hang out with my wife because, and she'll say, I'll get one of those like, oh, what are you going to go? Yeah, I get that like, oh, you going to go work? It's like,
and I'll do the halfway in between of like, hey, I want to come hang out with you on the couch. Let's put a show on, but I'm going to have to bring my laptop.
Exactly. I'll do the same.
Work there.
Yep.
So it's like, hey, we're talking and stuff. I'm not doing something so in depth that I can't hold a conversation still, but I'm still kind of like getting some background stuff done. Sometimes that's better than me just going down to my office is in our basement.
Yep.
Sometimes that's better than me just going to my basement and being completely unavailable.
Yep.
Sometimes that halfway, that negotiation or that halfway compromise is better than nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, and even like getting up at like, I got the gym here. That's why I got a gym here. Like I was like, I don't even have the time to go into gyms anymore. This was like a few years ago. We kind of, once we start getting kids,
it's worth the investment.
It's worth the investment. Like they're like, oh, you don't have time to, I was like, yes. I was like, do you understand like that 15, 20 to get to the gym and then you're at it. Now it's great. I can walk over and I can go, again, maybe you don't get a full set in, but at least I can go over there and I can go do 3 sets of bench in the next 10 minutes. And then that's my workout for the day. If that's my workout for the day, guess what? We got it done. Like
I have lately what I've been doing is because I noticed that the more complicated the programming is, the more likely I am to be like, I don't have time today. And so I've tried to just really simplify things. So what I've been doing is at bare minimum, I've been following the 5-3-1 programming. And that's at bare minimum, I'll just get the core set done for the set reps in for that day, the core lift, which is all the powerlifting plus a strict press. And there's other ancillary lifts and stuff that if I have the time of the day, I'll do the ancillary lifts. But at bare minimum, I get that core lift done. And then I make sure that I get 10,000 steps in, which usually requires me to go walk for an hour.
Yep.
Because I'm not active enough throughout the day to actually get to 10,000 steps. So I'll have to go walk for an hour to like get me the rest of the way across the line to 10,000. That ensures that my metabolism stays at a certain level, and the strength training is good for bone density. It's good for mental health.
Exactly.
It's good for all that different stuff. So I'm like, if I can do more, great. If I can't, this is fine.
Yep.
This is better than nothing. It's something to keep the physical side taken care
Exactly, yeah. And this thing too, because I was running out, I was like, oh, I'll work out at noon. And sometimes it kind of works, and then like I really just getting up at 5:30, 5:45, I either get a run in or getting like a little bit of a lift, something in, and then what's great is if I get a run in and then I can hit like a little bit of lifts during the day or something like that. But yeah, you do. And then eating correctly, not boozing during the week, like that helped a lot. Like, and it wasn't like I was drinking a lot. It's just like, oh, I'll have a nightcap, which we all did or used to do. And it wasn't that big a deal. Now, dude, after my panic attack, like back in 2019, and my blood pressure was all jacked up with alcohol, like having like I can feel it if it's a different type of alcohol, like right away. If it's a wrong type of wine, dude, I can feel my blood pressure start going up. But if it's the right type of bourbon, I'll knock out and I'll sleep which is great. But it's like you don't know what you're getting, and I'm not trying to do that every night. And you wouldn't think it's that big a deal until you get a good night's sleep, and you're like, "Fuck, man, it's a good night's sleep." Like that's way more important than having 1 or 2 beers or something like that, or whatever. Even on the weekends, it's like, having the one bourbon, as long as I don't have it too late, yeah, I'm good to go. But yeah, man, those. I like the quote, and I think John said the same thing too last week. He had that, and I was like, yeah, that's a great quote. I mean, I've heard it before. Was it one thing you do it all, or fuck, I already fucked it up.
How you do anything is
how you do anything, or anything is how you do everything. Yeah. And he said that the other week, and I was like, and he complimented me on the edit, and it's like one of those things where it's always nice hearing that, because it's like, I don't know how to, sometimes I don't have to put words to things that you do, and you're like, oh yeah, I do that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, the small things, like back when, probably a few years back when, I ever feel about him, like the Jordan Peterson, like making your bed, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been doing that for you.
That was Admiral McCraven.
It was McCraven, but then Peterson really blew it. He really blew it up. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. And it's like also like goal setting, people are like, oh my God, this new wave.
I'm a big fan of goal
setting.
Like,
and I always tell people, I was like, honestly, like you never you don't talk about social media. Now it's a big thing on social media, is like, I was fortunate enough back in the day, wrestling was like, that was the big, like we did goal setting every year. And that was a big part of our culture. So like, I've been doing it since I was 13. I'd be like, what's your next goal? How do you accomplish the next goal? If you don't get like, then we would put in like 1 year, 2, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year plans of how do you accomplish this goal? And you make lists every single summer, every single season. So that's always been in the back of the head. But yeah, I agree with you. I just, honing stuff in. And I think we know a lot more about our bodies, and like the Merrick, like I've looked into it. I need to do it. It's one of those things that's on my list is the Merrick Health or the doing the blood test. I want to check with hunters every day. I get a little more concerned about the cancer. It freaks me out. The hunter, so I wanted to go to Hunter 7 and get just the body workup, just because that you can be all healthy and whatever. And it's just like out of fucking left field. You hear those horror stories like, yeah, the guy got cancer and he was gone 8 months later. There's like nothing you can do about it. I'm like, fuck, man. We were all near those burn pits. We were all in that, sandbox. You're like, fuck, dude. You kind of hear that. So, no, I agree. I think getting your shit straight, especially as you get older, especially if you want to keep performing at a high level, which is what we want to do. Like you're very good at explaining it, and I'm the same way. It's like, hey, I want to keep going on, like even scuba diving, filming underwater. I got to go chase Delta operators around in 3 weeks, or former Delta operators around in 90-degree heat for 6 hours every day for the next 4 days. I got to be tip-top shape at 38 years old. Like that's just how it is. Like that's why I go run 2 to 3 miles every day. Trying to keep and not drinking. I'm sure back in our younger years, like, all right, let's have another drink, and then every night you would in production we'd go get beers or something. But now it's like, man, Now the hard part is like, drink some water, get those electrolyte packets, and you eat your factor meal. Go to bed at if you can go to bed at 9, 10 o'clock. Get your good sleep because we're back up at 6, and you got to be at sharp. And everyone's like, oh, we got to work. Well, I only need 4 hours of sleep. Well, you know what, man? Sometimes it's like for you to be the best, go to bed at 9. It's okay. Like go to bed at 8. Go to bed at 8:30 because when you get up at 6. You're already up at 5 a.m.
On 4 hours of sleep. Imagine what you would be if you were getting a full 7-8 hours.
Oh my God, yeah, dude. I checked my watch. I spent money on a Garmin, and I was like, dude, I check this thing every morning. It's like, what was your sleep score? What's your REM cycle? Like, what's your body battery at? And it feels right. Fine. And I mean, just taking all that in, I think helps perform at that level. Like I said, you put into words very well. Like, how do you want to perform at a high level? Every small thing that we do now, especially as we get older, I'm sure.
Well, it just becomes more high. So you have less room for error.
Yes. Yeah.
On that sort of, body maintenance, mind maintenance, spiritual maintenance, all of that. You have less room for error the older you get. Yep. So you have to dial it in closer and closer. When you're younger, you can be a little bit sloppy with it. You'll be fine. The older you get, the more. More you lose that margin for error, and you have to take it seriously. You don't have any other choice.
So it happens every once in a while, but I'll just be standing and I'll twist my ankle. I tell people that when they get older. I was like just standing one time, and I just like turned towards Amanda, and I was like, oh, and like she's like, what happened? I was like, I just twisted my ankle. And she's like, are you serious? I was like, I don't know. I was just standing here. But it is. Yeah, I agree with you. It's like that. The room for error. I mean, when we were younger, I remember doing the craziest shit on a horrific diet. You know what I mean? Like you don't know nothing about anything. And you're just pushing through because you're, young and can just do it. Like I remember just drinking, just make sure you drink plenty of Gatorade, but like eating like, you didn't even think you were eating like shit, but you're like, oh, I'll eat the Subway sandwiches and then I'll, do this and then go run 7 miles 10 minutes after I did that to go burn it off. Like it's, the stuff you would do. It's like, you feel like you're always just like, it's not like, it was never calculated when you're younger, or maybe some guys it is, and maybe they were fortunate enough to know that knowledge of, it's like, well, I wish I knew what I knew when I was younger. It's like, well, yeah, it would have been like, even the drinking aspect, how much you drank while you were in like that's the big culture. And I talked to a few personal trainers once before, probably a few years back, and they're like, they try to help guys that are in the military already. And they're like, it's a hard culture to break, but they're like, guys that are trying to train now in high level that are younger are finding out like, dude, if you want to go Delta, or you're trying to do tier 1, or you're trying to do SS, just getting prepared for selection or MARSOC or whatever, stop drinking during the week. They're like, drink on the weekend. It's fine. Stop during the week. You will see massive gain. Yep. And your training, because once you turn that 21, I know you did it, I did it. It's like, dude, you're drinking every single night, and then you go hard during the weekends, and you're still getting up and running insane miles, Yep. But as you get older, it's like that shit knocks you out. But
I think even when you're younger, it's like, man, how much better could I have been?
Yeah, I thought of that too. It's just like all the time, like just knowing dietitian stuff, like just simple stuff, and it's like, or more protein, or doing this or doing that, or just less drinking, more, whatever. Powerlifts. I didn't even know anything about powerlifting until I was in the contractor. It's like, oh shit, that's a deadlift. I was well out of the Marine Corps, of it. When I actually had somebody in my team, because I was terrible at pull-ups. They're like, everybody in the Marine Corps is just like, go hit the pull-up bar, go hit the pull-up bar. It's like, I'm doing the pull-up bar. Like I look like a Holocaust victim right now. I'm skinny, and finally somebody that knew what they were doing was like, stop doing that, go hit the gym, go do lat pull downs for the next 2 weeks. And it jumped my pull-ups like 10. It was like insane, because I was light enough to where I could do the pull-ups, but then I put on, like, I got my strengthened myself enough to, all I had to do was go to the gym and just be like, start doing lat pull downs. And now I'm jumping up on the pull-up bar and I'm knocking out well over what I needed to do, So I think it's just sometimes that knowledge. But no, I agree with you. I think as we get older, honing that in and getting, understanding what we need to do, we have the knowledge now. Now it's like trying to keep the physical body, like, okay, we're trying to maintain that. So now we have the wisdom. Now it's like, all right, now we got to enact that on our body. Or used to, it was like reverse before. It's like, I'll power through whatever, juju bullshit you're going to tell me. Now it's like, oh, no, maybe I shouldn't drink during the week. Oh, maybe I shouldn't eat that or whatever. Yeah. Factor meals though, go for it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love them.
Marty loves them. So going beyond that, then now, what's your next steps? What are you working on now?
Yeah. So my last book, Send Me, The True Story of a Mother at War, that is being turned into a movie right now. It's in the process. So I'm an executive producer on that. So I'll be involved in that increasingly as that gets closer and closer to going into full production. We've got I guess I won't get too specific with where we're at with it, but it's in process.
That's awesome.
It's very exciting. Yeah. And then I just recently signed the deal for my next book. I'm working with Jason McCarthy over at GoRuck.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we're going to be writing a really fantastic book that is equal parts story and really kind of diving into the history of humans carrying load over distance and rucking and how it's good for you in all different ways, and a little bit of Jason's story and how he came to become the rucking guy, and GoRuck is the rucking company. Yeah. So working on that, that's my next project. I'm in the weeds with that right now. And
that's awesome.
And then finally, I'm getting back to some of my roots a little bit. I've built a lot of things for other people over the years, and it's like, I think I need to build something for myself again. I've learned a lot over the years. I know how to do this. So launching my own show. It's called Subject Matter Expert. I don't know when this will be coming out, but it'll
next week.
It might not be live yet, but for people that are following me, keep an eye out for that. That'll be launching probably towards the end of July, if everything goes according to plan. And that'll be a show. It'll be a podcast. Yes, it'll go out on Spotify and everything like that, but really primary as a show on YouTube. And longer format, all of that sort of stuff, but really trying to leverage my background as a journalist, a reporter, all of that, to find people who, the show is called Subject Matter Expert. I'm not the subject matter expert. I'm going to find people who are subject matter experts in their area that can come in and break down issues that are happening in the world and the country today. It's not specific to the military or veterans, may include that demographic for sure, but not specific to that. But we'll tackle popular topics and give people, it'll be a show for people who want to hear from people who actually know what the hell they're talking about. Yeah. Because there's so much the internet is rife with people with hot takes. And, you see the meme that goes around like, oh, last week everybody was an expert on tariffs and now everybody's an expert on Iran, all of a sudden. It's like, you kind of like, well, how do you trust the information that you're consuming? We do live in a time where misinformation and disinformation, are being implemented everywhere that information can be consumed, either by non-state actors or by state actors. It's a thing. And so I kind of want to be that source of, hey, let me go leverage kind of a little bit of the Rolodex that I have at this point, and as well as other people that I'll reach out to, and bring them in to talk about these things that everybody's kind of wondering about, or feels like they're not getting the whole story on, or maybe they just don't understand it, period, I'll go find that person that is at the top of their career field and bring them in, and we'll go and break this down, and some of the names of the people that I bring on, you might recognize, some of them not so much, but yeah, that's kind of what that show will be. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I'll have an accompanying Substack with it. So I'll be launching that too. So you'll still be able to see some of my writing. And I'll maybe dive into some of those topics that we cover in the show in a little bit different way on the Substack and all of that. And so, yeah, between the movie, writing a book, and then a show that I'll be running, those are kind of the three main things.
It's a lot.
I'm not
awesome.
very good at not putting a lot of things on my plate.
It's just a movie and then another book deal, and then I'm starting my own Substack, or not starting, but YouTube channel, show, all of it, yeah.
So we'll see.
That's awesome. Well, where can everybody find you? Like, what's your socials? Where can they get, or even like, hey, just link up with you in general?
Right now, probably the best one. I have a couple of different Instagram handles at this point. I've got Marty the writer. I've got Marty the traveler, and then Marty with camera for all my photo stuff. So those are the three main Instagrams that I'm on. We got those. I've got the other. I'm on the other social media platforms. Do I go on them very often? Not really. The main thing I'd tell people is just like, hey, look for subject matter expert. Be looking for me to announce that on the my different social handles, and definitely would love people if that sounds like, again, if you're the type of person that likes to hear from people that know what they're talking about and want to consume that sort of a show, then like go and subscribe to that, and I look forward to having those drop every week. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, bro.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
Hell yeah.
Until the next time.
Till the next time.